And we're live. It's the pre-show, everybody. Hello, everyone. This is the pre-show for our 220-1001 Core 1 A+ study group. Oh, and look at that. We are live. I see video. I see an excellent stream status. It's excellent. We are doing all questions today. In this first hour, I will give you questions from the 220-1001 A+ exam objectives. And then in the second hour, I will open up the phone lines for questions. Not really phone lines. We won't do phone lines today, but I will take them from the chat. Forgot about that. Hi, everybody. Hi, chat room. How long is the stream going to be? Well, you just heard. So first hour, I give you questions. Second hour, you give me questions. That's how we do it. That's how it works. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. I know this week the schedule was a little bit different than most weeks, so it's good to be here. Of course, we do our Core 1 today. We do Core 2 on Friday. This is, as we sit here today, Tuesday, or it's Wednesday. Hello, February the 9th. It's whatever this says it is, not what's in my head. Don't think about what I think what day it is. I don't know. I got to figure it out. There's a lot going on in my world right now with content creation and A+ and a bunch of other things. We'll talk about some of that today, but most of it is going to be all A+ Core 1. That's what we'll focus on today. We will figure it out. Hello, chat room. Hi, France and St. Vincent and India and downtown Houston, where I am one day closer to you. We've got Dallas here, San Jose. Welcome. They're on Tasman Drive. Haven't been to Tasman Drive in quite a number of years. Have not been there in a very, very, very long time. But I'm glad it's still kicking. Glad it's still going. Got lots of people I know working there. Okay, Tyler says going to take 1,002 on Monday. It'll secure a $4,000, I'm guessing, raise on my salary. That's pretty exciting. Yeah, definitely keep doing that. I'll take an exam for $4,000. That sounds great. Hello, Houston, and Huntsville, in Germany, and Denmark, and Texas, and Oregon, and Bradenton. There's the Florida folks checking in. Hello, Brazil, Oklahoma City, Pensacola, more Florida here. Good to have you here. Hello, Chicago, and Atlanta, Nigeria, and Akron, and the UK. Good to have you here. Folks checking in from everywhere. Well, we get started in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So the scoring on the CompTIA exam is not something that's made public. We do know that every question is worth a different number of points. So there's no way to know how many questions you may have been from a passing score or not. And in fact, it doesn't matter how many. I would recommend you go look at the exam results on the Pearson VUE website under your account, and it will tell you which sections you got wrong. And that can give you some really good intel on what you might want to study for the next time you take this. There's the 5-minute warning. Thank you. Let's check cameras. Laptop is not on. Let's get that on. There we go. That looks pretty good. Joe with the super chat. We haven't even started, Joe. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Joe says, thanks again for the content. You are most welcome, and I appreciate your support of that. It really does go a long way, so thank you so much. We appreciate your support. Yes, the part of taking an exam is it is a very anxious time. It is. I'm not a good test taker. I get very nervous when I'm taking tests. I don't like exams like that. I'm fine setting up a router, configuring a firewall, talking in front of people. I got it. But taking an exam just drives me crazy. I'm so nervous. And maybe it is the money thing. As you're mentioning, Danny is mentioning in the chat that it's a money thing. You pay a lot of money for these vouchers, and you don't want to have to buy another voucher. So I get it. Absolutely. And I appreciate that because I've been there. One of the things I recommend, by the way, if you're one of those people that does have, you're very nervous in the exam room like I am, they give you about 15 or 20 minutes to read through the CompTIA candidate agreement. That's what they call it. The CompTIA candidate agreement it's effectively your non-disclosure that you're electronically signing before you take the exam. So I always tell people, if you're nervous, you're not comfortable, or you just want a little bit of a wind down, because when I walk into the room, there's a lot of adrenaline. I can't really read anything on the screen and understand what it's saying. So just read the candidate agreement. You've got 15 minutes to sit there and read the candidate agreement. And maybe by the end of that 15 minutes, you're now in the chair, things have settled down a little bit, and you can jump right into it. So that's my recommendation. Cleanthus in the chat room with the €20 super chat. Coming off the top rope. Thank you so much. It's quite generous. Passed my 1001 on the 31st of January. Congratulations on your Core 1. Now it's all about the Core 2, I guess. I'm thinking that that's what your next one will be, since you didn't say A+. So congratulations on that 1001, and best of luck with the 1002, because that's obviously going to be a big one. Is watching my objective videos enough to pass the exam? It could be, if your knowledge of technology is far enough along. That's all you need. But why would you only use one set of materials to pass your exam? There are no shortcuts. You're going to need to use as many different resources as you need. And everybody needs a different number of resources. Some people are fine with watching the videos. Some people are much more interested in getting a book, getting videos, doing hands-on, doing Q&A. There's a lot of different things you can do. So I never tell people to use just my videos. All right, we got about 2 minutes, a minute and a half before we get started. This is the pre-show. This is not, I'm just answering questions from the chat room. So it's almost a show, I guess. It is the pre-show. You didn't miss anything. Also in the chat, Josh with the $5 super chat. Josh is A+, Network Plus, Security Plus certified. Josh says, thanks for the content. Thank you for the super chat. Completely unnecessary. You don't have to do a super chat, but I sure appreciate it. And as I mentioned, it does go a long way. These lights, for some reason, I have to pay to have the lights turned on in here. I know, it's crazy, but that's the way it works. So we do appreciate that, Josh. Thank you so much. And Great Honor in the chat room, another $5 super chat. Great Honor says, passed my A+ Core 1 last week. Thanks for the content. See y'all on Friday for the Core 2 live stream. That's what Great Honor says. And I'm assuming that's what it was. That was more of a northern Florida, y'all. Alabama and Texas is a little bit different. So I don't know where you're coming from, Great Honor, but I appreciate that super chat. And another Vizerial in the chat room with a €5 super chat. Thank you for that super. We aren't even doing anything yet. I haven't even started the show, and it's time. But let me say thank you for that €5 super chat. Vizerial says, passed 1002 last week and finally certified. Yes. Now in talks for a junior sysadmin position. That is fantastic. I love to hear those stories. Thank you for your support. Congratulations on your certification. Let's do a live stream, everybody. I think it's time. If I can remember where the buttons are, we will make this happen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2022 Professor Messer A+ study group. This is specifically our Core 1 220-1001 study group. We are going to be giving you questions in this first hour that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. I will show you just in a moment how you can participate. We will also, in the second hour, I'm going to open up some chat. In the chat, I'll open up the chat room. We will take questions from the chat room. There will be plenty to go over. Let me see if I can get my presentation going. This is one of the problems when you do these once a month, that there's this big gap, and I should really consider what I have to do to prep prior to getting things started. There we go. This is something where you will be able to follow along in this live stream and participate if you are here live. The way you do that is you pop open a new browser window and browse to this URL, professormesser.com/QA. That's professormesser.com/QA. If you do that, there will be a question waiting for you. We'll look at that question in just a moment. There's also an app you can get because, of course, there is an app you can get. Go to your favorite app store and download the Socrative Student app. There's a Socrative Teacher app. Don't get that one. That's the one for me. You get the Socrative Student app, and it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. If it's not on this page enough, the way you spell it is PROFESSORMESSER. Now, if you do all of those things right, you're logged in, and you're able to see this, and you're able to go to professormesser.com/QA, there will be a question waiting for it. It's a question from last month to see how well you remember some of the things we talked about last month. The question states, a technician needs to create a wire map of a serial cable. Which of the following tools would be the best choice for this task? Would it be a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a multimeter, or a tone generator? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen, and lock in your answer. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Of course, our standing rule for questions during this first hour is please no answering in the chat room and please no hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. We'll come back to that question in just a bit. First, I want to thank you for being here. We are not really able to do these study groups unless folks show up to answer the questions. Otherwise, it would be kind of boring. So we've got plenty to do in this first hour, but when we're not doing a live stream, there's still plenty of content. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Twitter, and professormesser.com/Instagram. Make sure that you have a look at those resources. There's plenty of videos that are out on our YouTube channel, and there are more videos coming soon. So make sure that you subscribe to that channel, or you won't even see them when they show up. And I'd love for you to be able to see those new videos when they are released. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I will be offering 1 hour of a webinar category CEU at some time during this first hour. So keep listening in if you're someone who is looking for a CEU, or you're someone who is collecting CEUs for really any reason. For those of you that have been watching the A+, the current version of A+, is the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. And as many of you have emailed me over the last number of weeks, that this was an exam released in January 15th of 2019. And as we know, usually about 3 years after that, CompTIA will release a new version of the exam. But you'll notice that CompTIA has not done that. I wonder what may have happened during this 3 years that would have caused this to be delayed a bit. In any case, there's a little bit of a delay. We probably will not see a new exam this month. You probably won't see one next month. You'll probably see there probably will be an announcement next month as to when a new exam might show up. But here's the good part. For all of you who are studying, for all of you who are watching this live stream, the good part is that there is a 6-month overlap between the time when they release a new set of exams and when the existing exams are retired. That means, as we sit here in February, that the earliest exam retirement would be August of 2022. Now, that is an estimate. That exam date for retirement, it could be even after August of 2022. We simply don't know yet. But the point now is that you are watching and studying for the current version of these exams. Keep watching and studying for these exams. When you've passed both of these exams, you are A+ certified for 3 years, regardless of what they do with the exam dates. Once you're certified, exams mean nothing to you. They could come out with a new exam every day. It wouldn't matter to you. You're already certified. So the point is, get certified now, and then it won't matter. You'll just be A+ certified for as long as you would like to be, because you can keep renewing every 3 years without having to take the test again. So you take these tests one time, and that's it. You never have to take the tests again. You simply keep renewing your certification every 3 years. The exams are 2 separate exams that you need to take, the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. Both of these are 90 minutes long. These are scored differently. You need to earn a 675 on the 1001 and a 700 on the 1002. And you'll notice the scales from 100 to 900. I know it's weird, but that's the way they do it. So we'll focus today just on one of these exams, the 220-1001. So all of the questions that we do today will be on mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware network troubleshooting. So that is what we will focus. Now, if you come back in a couple of days for the Friday live stream, we're going to do all the core 2 days from now. So we'd love to have you here for both. Think about coming back for that. One of the things you probably have noticed is that all of my videos are available for you to watch for free on my website. They're available for you to watch for free on YouTube. You don't have to register. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to get a bonus certification, login, registration that gets you to some type of paywall. No, they're just out there. You just go to the page and you watch them. I won't ask you for any information. I don't want to know what your email address is. I just want you to get certified. So all the videos are out there for you to watch. Some people, though, would like to have offline versions of these videos. They would like course notes. They would like practice exams. They would like other things to go along with this, and you can find that in my Success Bundle. Find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/1001Success. I've also got free questions and answers on my website. This is the Take 10 Challenge, which is really an archive of the questions we do during the study group. You'll find it at ProfessorMesser.com/Take10. Plenty to see there as well. Feel free to check out those free questions. There's also a replay, a video replay of this available immediately afterwards. It's just automatically put on my YouTube channel, so you'll see that right after the live stream. And you've also got a podcast version as a replay in a audio-only format. You'll find that at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast, so you can add that to your favorite podcast listening program. I'll also let you know that if you go to my YouTube channel, the YouTube video description has a set of timestamps on it, and you can click those timestamps to go directly to a question and answer or anything else that we happen to be doing during this live stream that was eventful enough for us to add a timestamp to it. Those are added by my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching the replay. Everybody say hi to Lori. She watches the live stream chat replay as it goes by as well. She gets those done in about a day. So she watches this entire thing. She goes through everything that we have done and puts these timestamps in, and they're so valuable. Make sure you take advantage of those as well. When we're not doing this live, we are in our Discord channel. Feel free to join us over on Discord. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Did I say that right? ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Has it been a while since I've done a live stream? The answer is yes. You will see plenty on Discord. Folks are in there all the time. So feel free to have a look at our Discord channel. I'm in there too. So if you have a question during your studies, you're trying to figure out what is the best way to go about studying for a particular exam, that's a great place to go. When you are ready to take your exam, there are a series of vouchers that are available on my website that are already discounted. So don't pay full price on the Pearson VUE website to take your exam. Instead, visit ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers, where the vouchers are already discounted. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to hunt around the internet. You don't need one of these crazy extensions for your browser. You simply go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. And if you do that, I will give you a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. It's a set of life hacks that are focused on getting you through the study, the test taking, and in some cases, the after exam tips that can help you with these certification exams. And you just get that for free if you buy the voucher at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Quickly on the YouTube chat, I want to thank Eric for his $1.99 super chat. Eric didn't even put any comments in there. Eric's just offering the $1.99. Thank you, Eric, for that donation to what we are doing here. We appreciate your support. And Angela in the chat room also with a $4.99 super chat. Thank you for that as well. And Angela says, thank you for the videos. You're quite welcome. And thanks for your super chat. I appreciate that. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was, a technician needs to create a wire map of a serial cable. Which of the following tools would be the best choice for this task? Would it be a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a multimeter, or a tone generator? And the answers as they have come in, well, we aren't even sure. We've already hit a bit of a confusing wall here. We got 30% of you that said a multimeter will give you a wire map. 21% said a tone generator is a wire map, tied with the 21% that said crimper. 18% said an inductive probe, and 8% said a punch-down tool. The real key of creating these cables, and this happens all the time, is you will have a box full of cables. You'll pull out one of these cables. The cable looks like it has the two ends that you need, but you're just not sure how this cable is wired. And you would like to be able to know, where does pin 1 on one end of the cable go on the other end? Does it go to pin 1? Does it go to pin 2? Does it go to pin 3? I need some type of map that will tell me where all these wires happen to go. So one of the best ways to do that when you only have a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a multimeter, or a tone generator is to grab your multimeter, because a multimeter, by the way, does everything. A multimeter is just amazing. Lots to go through there. The multimeter will give you voltages, both DC and AC voltages, so you can check the power coming out of the wall. You can check the power on your motherboard and the other components there. There's plenty to go through there, but this also gives you continuity. Continuity is a way to determine the continuous ends between these two pieces of copper. So we can, of course, click one side, put it on pin 1 on one side, and then use the multimeter to go through all of the other pins on the other side. And if you do that, there will be you'll be able to create a map of where everything goes. It's a really good way to do this. Obviously, if you have a cable tester that has a wire map feature built into that, that would have been a useful tool, but that wasn't one of our options. The option was a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a tone generator, and a multimeter. And if you answered D, multimeter, you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that. We've got another super chat that came in, Eric, again, for a $4.99 super chat. Eric says, I just passed my A+ exams. Congratulations. Wondering if you will have any Network Plus practice exams. Thanks for your work. I would love to have some Network Plus practice exams. It would probably be something I would work on later this year. It's one of those things that I would love. I've got plans. I've got everything in place. I just need to write them. And it's more of a physics problem at this point, isn't it? That's the real key. Let's do some new questions. Also, Eric, thank you for that super chat as well. I wish I could get practice exams done faster than that, but that's sort of, I'd like to get everything done faster. I'd like to get all of my content out as fast as possible. That's what we're working towards. Whenever we look at the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus exams, one of the things you'll notice is that they are not all multiple choice questions. For example, the one we just did was a question with multiple answers available. That's a multiple choice question. But on the first set of exam questions you get, maybe the first handful, 5 or so, plus or minus, you're going to get questions that are not multiple choice. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. Performance-based questions might be a drag and drop question. It might be a fill-in-the-blank question, a matching question, maybe putting things in a particular order. Maybe it's a drag and drop into going different places. I guess it just depends on what you might run into. But all of these questions you get are at the very beginning of the exam. So once you get through those handful of performance-based questions, everything else is multiple choice. So don't be dismayed. If you start the exam and you're thinking, these are really involved questions, I'm never going to be able to get through a maximum of 90 of these in the time we have allocated, that's okay. You're not going to get 90 of those questions. You will get questions that really focus on getting 5 or 6 of those performance-based. Then the rest are multiple choice. That's what those are. So I have for you a multiple choice, not a multiple choice, a non-multiple choice, a performance-based question for you. This one comes from the networking section of the 221,001, and it asks you to list the type of protocol, which would be TCP or UDP, and the port number for these particular tasks. So for those of you listening on the podcast side, let me give you the list of these particular tasks. They are: resolve an IP address from an FQDN, transfer messages between mail servers, query a network directory database, securely purchase an item on a website, and view the shared files on a Mac OS device. So there are 5 different tasks. I would love for you to go through all 5 of these tasks and tell me what protocol and port numbers associated with these 5 tasks. So if you think that the resolve an IP address from an FQDN is TCP 80, that's what you need to put in. Put in TCP 80. This is really a fill in the blank that you would do online. If you were on an actual exam, you probably would do a drag and drop, or maybe a matching type question is what you would find. That's the real key, isn't it? Let's see how we're doing with this. I am struggling to find exactly the things I need to have ready for you on this side. Going through a live stream like this and not doing it for a couple weeks, you get kind of rusty. So we're getting back into it. I like how this is going so far. So this fill in the blank that we have, feel free to go through. I'm going to list these out again for those of you listening. List the type of protocol and the port number. Resolve an IP address from an FQDN. What protocol and port number would be for that? Transfer messages between mail servers. Again, what would you use? Query a network directory database. What would you use? There's a number of different things you can do there. Securely purchase an item on a website. And then lastly, view the shared files on a Mac OS device. This is just a subset of the port numbers you need to know for the exam. So make sure you study up on those. If any of these are unusual, notice that I'm also not giving you the name of the network protocol and then asking you to tell me what that network protocol port number happens to be. So that's not what I'm asking you either. I'm wanting to know what those protocols do. And this is very significant on the exam. Very rarely on the exam, if ever, do you get a trivia question. So they are not going to ask you what port number is used by HTTP. You'll never get a question like that. Instead, you'll get a question like this that describes a situation and you need to apply a particular technology to that situation. That's a good thing to keep in mind, because flashcards aren't going to help you for something like this. You need to go beyond the flashcard. And the questions you get on the exam are certainly beyond the flashcard. So that's another one to think about as you're stepping through this. If you think you know the answer, go to that link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA. Make sure that you lock in that question. And as always, no hints in the chat room, no answers in the chat room. We'll figure this out as we go along. So let's step through each one of these and let's look at the port numbers. So we'll start with resolving an IP address from an FQDN. Resolve an IP address from an FQDN. This is referring to a fully qualified domain name. That's what the FQDN is. And this is very common on the exam as well, because there oftentimes will give you one of these abbreviations, but they won't tell you what the abbreviation is. But you have to know what the abbreviation is in order to answer the entire question. This is another one of those. So resolving an IP address from an FQDN is going to be the DNS protocol, the domain name system, and it uses a UDP communication over port 53 for doing something like resolving an IP address. Now, there may be times when using DNS where it may use TCP in order to do this, especially if it's a big transfer of data. So occasionally you will see TCP. I'll accept either one of those for this, but if you're for the most part, 99.99% of DNS traffic, if not more, will be UDP 53. It's not very common to see DNS using TCP unless you're doing some type of zone transfer or you are requesting a very large response that will come back to you. Next on our list is transfer messages between email servers. That's the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, or SMTP. It uses TCP port 25. Now, obviously, there are secure versions of these. I didn't specify the secure version here, but if you put some of the secure version ports in here, that's an acceptable answer as well in my world, since this is a fill in the blank. Third on our list, query a network directory database. The way that you might do that is using LDAP, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It uses TCP over port 389. TCP 389 for LDAP. Fourth on our list, securely purchase an item on a website. This is pretty important to me, making sure that the secure part is there. And the way you would do that is using HTTPS. S is for secure. S is for savings. TCP 443 is what you would use if you are using HTTPS to securely purchase an item on a website. And then lastly, view the shared files on a Mac OS device. This would be the Apple filing protocol. It uses TCP 548. Now, I realize everything on this list are the non-secure versions of these ports and protocols, but if you answered with the secure versions of these, I'll accept that as well. The only one that specifically said secure was securely purchase an item on a website. That one has to be HTTPS. It cannot be HTTP. So HTTPS is absolutely the right answer. But if you answered SMTPS or LDAP-S, I think there is an AFP version of this that is secure, but I think AFP incorporates some of the secure pieces of that right on top of it. But if you answer with those secure versions, that's a completely acceptable response as well. Port numbers are a bit of a challenge. It's one of those that if you've never worked with port numbers before, you sort of have to go into it with a rote memorization type scenario. It's one of those very few circumstances where port numbers are really useful. But if you go to, let me see if I can bring up a website here real quick. If you go to ProfessorMaster.com/take10 and you go to the Take 10 challenges for Core 1 and you get an ad for something else, just ignore the ad for the moment. Down here on the Core 1 Take 10 questions are performance-based questions. And if you click that performance-based question number 1, you get a port number test where you can then drag and drop all the port numbers. Let's do full screen on that. There it is. So you can just drag and drop what you think they happen to be. I have both secure and, well, mostly the non-secure versions because that's what they put on the CompTIA exam objectives. So that might be a good thing to go through as well if you're trying to memorize port numbers. That's a little tool you can play around with that might be something useful for you. All of these port numbers are pretty important. You will get questions on the exam. It is possible to get, if you miss one or two, it's possible to get partial credit, but you will not always be guaranteed partial credit. CompTIA just says sometimes we can give partial credit, sometimes we don't. They don't tell you which exam questions do that, so don't worry so much about exam questions. We'll figure it out to be able to see that. The questions, we'll have to figure out the details of this, so maybe you'll be able to find those and work through the port numbers. If you don't recognize any of these, they are all listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have a look at those. Let's now go to, now that we've gone through our performance-based question, we're into the exam. Let's do some more multiple choice-based questions, shall we? The next I have for you is a question that asks, the output of a laser printer is faded and difficult to read. Which of the following would be the most likely way to resolve this issue? Would it be clean the print heads, replace the fuser, update the print driver, add more memory, or replace the toner cartridge? The output of a laser printer is faded and difficult to read. Which of the following would be the most likely way to resolve this issue? Is it clean the print heads, replace the fuser, update the print driver, add more memory, or replace the toner cartridge? If you know the answer, go to ProfessorMaster.com/QA, lock in your answer. That's where you would go. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The website I just went to that had that drag and drop for the port numbers is on ProfessorMaster.com/take10. Go to the Core 1 Take 10 questions. That's where that is. ProfessorMaster.com/take10 is where those are. And those are kind of fun to figure that out, to go through that. Sipiaroth08, the usernames always get me, with the $1.99 super chat. Thank you for that. They write, thanks for helping me pass the CompTIA A+ exam. Congratulations on your certification. I think that's probably the most important part of that. Always good to be able to know that you earned that certification. You've locked it in. Always good to have in your pocket. You know, we talked earlier about there being a transition this year between one A+ version and another. And one thing I didn't emphasize, and I think this is really, really important, is do not wait for a new version of this exam to come out. Never, never, never wait to get certified. If you are studying today for your A+, keep studying this current version and take both exams before they retire. On the earliest would be August. So make sure you are familiar with those timeframes and keep track of what the timeframes are. August is just an estimate. It might even be later. We don't know yet. Hopefully we'll know more next month. I think I've heard something on the street that will tell us that we might know more information next month about when they might be planning to do all of this. So we probably won't even see a new exam next month, will we? We'll just see the announcement of when that might be. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, the output of a laser printer is faded, difficult to read. Which of the following would be the most likely way to resolve this issue? Would it be to clean the print heads, replace the fuser, update the print driver, add more memory, or replace the toner cartridge? Let's see how we did. 70% said replace the toner cartridge. That's what you did. We got a tie for second between clean the print heads and replace the fuser at about 12 and 13%, respectively. And we have 4% add more memory and 1% update the print driver. Nobody thought that it's either of those. Whenever you run into this scenario, you have bad output. Here is an example of some bad output. This is a test page that I did. And on this test page, it's hard to read this test page. It's very light. It's very difficult to really see what's going on there. It's as if there's not enough ink or not enough toner, depending on what type of printer we are using. So that's one that I think would be important to know about. So what do you do to fix it? Well, if it's an inkjet printer, you would obviously get more ink. But this question talked specifically about the output of a laser printer. A laser printer is not an inkjet printer. It doesn't have ink. What sort of has ink? But it's ink in the form of these tiny little pieces of toner. These pieces of toner that are contained within the toner cartridge. And if it's getting very difficult to read, then it's most likely that you are running out of that toner. And of course, the easiest way to do that, replace the toner, is to remove the existing toner cartridge and replace it with a brand new full toner cartridge so that you can then get a much darker display in your output. So that is one, I think, as you go through this, that you should know about, not only for inkjet, but also laser printers. And obviously this question was very specific to laser printers, and that's why replacing the toner cartridge would be the right answer. There are other answers in here. 15% said replace the fuser. The fuser is the heating element that's right at the end, near the end of the printing process. And it takes all the toner you put on a page and it heats it up and effectively melts it permanently into the paper itself. If your toner cartridge or your fuser is not working, then when the page comes out, it looks great. But as soon as you touch that paper, it smears because the toner is not fused onto the paper. A fuser fuses that toner right into the paper. So in this case, it's faded and difficult to read. That's not because of the fuser. That's because there's not enough toner. Cleaning the print heads won't help you because it's a laser printer and there aren't any print heads. That would be if you were perhaps on an inkjet printer. That might be a very likely way to resolve the issue. Obviously, you need to check the type of printer you're using. If you open that up, you're thinking, where's the print heads in here? Or especially if it's your first day at work and they say you need to go down to accounting and clean the print heads on the laser printer, you know something's up. So be careful on your first day at work. Updating a print driver, probably not going to help you as far as the amount of what you can see on a page, although there are some print drivers that allow you to set an economy mode that does not print a full 100 complete amount of toner or ink so that you save a little bit of toner or ink. But even in those cases, it's not so faded that it would be difficult to read. So probably not your print driver. And adding more memory, a laser printer has memory inside. It builds the page in the memory. If you don't have enough memory, then the page is not going to render properly, and you'll only get a portion of the page printed, but that portion that prints looks fine. So adding more memory is not going to help you if the output is faded and difficult to read. So at least we know where to go with this, and I think most of you knew the way that you would resolve this issue, probably because you've resolved it before, is replace the toner cartridge. About 70% of you are right on the money with that one. That is the right answer, and if you answered E, you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. This next question asks, a system administrator is configuring a mobile phone for sending email messages. Which of the following should be configured on this phone? Should it be SMB, AFP, SMTP, IMAP, or LDAP? We're going to see how many of us were really paying attention earlier, aren't we? A system administrator is configuring a mobile phone for sending email messages. Which of the following should be configured on this phone? Is it SMB, AFP, SMTP, IMAP, or LDAP? Which of those is it? Which? We should figure out which one of those it happens to be. If you think you know the answer, there's the link on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. There it is right there. Follow that link. You can lock in your answer, see what it happens to be. This is one of those scenarios where, again, knowing an abbreviation doesn't necessarily help you with the answer. So we're going to have to figure out how to make this happen. Configuring a mobile phone for sending email is a very common task. So make sure you're familiar with that, and certainly comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you think you know the answer, lock it in right there, ProfessorMesser.com/QA. I see a lot of people locking this one in fast. So I hope this is one that certainly is familiar with many of you, because I saw that number go up really, really quick. Sticks and Stones in the chat room with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you so much for that donation. No message in there, just sharing the love. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. One of the things that we do as we are building these together is that we're trying to create a set of questions that really has a feel or a flavor of what's on the exam. So hopefully you're able to see that. And Sticks and Stones, thanks again for that donation. We sure appreciate it. So those of you that are working on this question, if you've never configured a mobile phone for retrieving mail, maybe you don't even want to change your mobile phone, but if you go out to your ISP, every ISP has a support page that describes the process of adding an email account to your mobile phone. It's a great way to see how they say you should do it. Almost answers this question for you. So that's my little hint, my little cheat for you as you go through this. Let's see how you answered and see if we got this one right. A system administrator is configuring a mobile phone for sending email messages. Which of the following should be configured on this phone? Is it SMB, AFP, SMTP, IMAP, or LDAP? There's a lot of mail on this message. 78% of you say it's SMTP. Only 20% said it was the other mail protocol, IMAP. And then we have 1% apiece for all of the others. For SMB, AFP, and LDAP, only 1%. Maybe some of you were listening in earlier as we went through this. The real key for this one, and the hint that you should absolutely be looking for, is understanding what we want to be able to do. In this case, we're configuring the mobile phone for sending an email message. And if you are sending a message, then you need to go to your mail configuration, and you need to configure in the mail. There's probably an option there for IMAP, an option for POP3. You've got retrieving messages here, but down at the bottom, on an iPhone anyway, is the option for an outgoing mail server. That's because the process of IMAP or POP is for retrieving messages, not sending them. To be able for outgoing or sending a mail message, you need to add an SMTP server. And usually you not only need to put the server name in, but you have to authenticate to that server. So it also asks for a username and a password. So if you are configuring your system, then you are using to send mail, then you are configuring the simple mail transfer protocol. It should be the sending mail transfer protocol, but it's simple. But if you remember that it's sending, I think that might help you to be able to do that. Some folks in the chat room have been putting in other acronyms that you could put into this list. I don't want to throw you off on any of those other ones, but certainly SMTP for sending mail to people, the simple mail transfer protocol, is the way that you would do that. And it's also is the same protocol that's used to send mail between mail servers. So if you grow up someday and become a mail administrator, then you are probably going to be configuring a lot of SMTP configurations between your mail server and others. Very useful to do that. Make sure you add in that username and password because it almost always requires some type of credential. You may find on some servers that you're not sending SMTP over the traditional TCP/25 because that is not a secure port. Very often, secure is built into something like TCP/587. But you should always check with the mail service that you are using to see what port and what protocol they use for their secure version of SMTP. And that is the right answer. If you answered C, 79%, absolutely right. We just mentioned IMAP is a protocol used for retrieving email messages from the server. And IMAP, only 19% of you chose that. That is certainly a mail protocol, but it doesn't send mail. It only receives mail. We have 1% for the server message block. That's used in Windows to be able to transfer files, use a share, or to print. We have the Apple version of this, Apple Filing Protocol, or Apple File Protocol, 1% for that one as well. And then lastly, LDAP, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. These are all protocols, almost all of these we've seen before today. Only 1% of you got that one right, or chose that one as the option. 79% got it right. It is answer C, SMTP. Let's do another question. Before we do that, I want to remind you that on the website, as you watch these videos, you'll notice for A+, there are a lot of videos. To be exact, 137 A+ videos. A lot. This is over 18 hours and 29 minutes of content. That's a lot of content to go through. And I always recommend that you take notes as you're watching these videos, but not everybody has time to take notes. You may not be in a place where you can take notes. You might be driving. You might be traveling. So it would be nice if there was some type of notes that you would be able to use. And in fact, I've created some for you. These are my course notes for the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. My course notes provide you with a summary of everything you need to know because I've taken everything from these videos. This is the actual course notes PDF. All of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts. I'm going to fast forward a little bit through here so you can see a lot of the tables, the pictures, the images, everything's in there. So I have taken for A+, how many pages is this for A+? It is 58 pages of notes, not introduction or anything else. The 58 is the number of notes that we have in this set of course notes. You can find out more about these by going to professormesser.com/1001notes. It's a great way to support what we do here on the website. I think it's also a great way to help you learn what you need to learn before you walk into that exam room. It's a great resource, professormesser.com/1001notes. Let's do another question. I promised you another question. Here it is. This question asks, an administrator needs to configure a firewall to allow encrypted terminal sessions. Which of the following should be included in the firewall rule set? We're doing a lot of protocol questions here at the beginning. They're not all like this. I do have some more for you, but we're stepping through each section of the CompTIA exam objectives, and you'll notice there are port numbers in section 1, port numbers in domain 2. There's port numbers all over. In this case, we are trying to configure this firewall to allow encrypted terminal sessions. Should we use SSH, HTTPS, FTP, RDP, or Telnet? An administrator needs to configure a firewall to allow encrypted terminal sessions. Which of the following should be included in the firewall rule set? Is it SSH, HTTPS, FTP, RDP, or Telnet? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA right there on your screen and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. figure out all of those. Oh, lots going on there. For those in the chat room asking, there's a few questions that have popped up. Do I still offer discount vouchers? I'm glad you asked. We talked about this earlier. Go to ProfessorMaster.com/vouchers. They're already pre-discounted. They're just sitting out there if you are in the U.S. or Canada or a U.S. territory. ProfessorMaster.com/vouchers. There's also a link in the video description, or just go to that link. It'll get you there. Also, by the way, here's a copy of my course notes, the physical version of the course notes. It's the same thing you get in the digital version, but it's a printed book in color. It's bound. It's nice. I have these for both the Core 1 and the Core 2. So all 58 of those pages are right there in full living color. And if you get the physical version, I ship this to you, and I also give you the digital version for free if you have the physical version. So you have a choice of both of those on the website. Plenty to go through. Let's see how we do with this question. A number of you have already answered, so I'm thinking a number of you already know this answer. The question asked, an administrator needs to configure a firewall to allow encrypted terminal sessions. Which of the following should be included in the firewall rule set? Should it use SSH, HTTPS, FTP, RDP, or Telnet? Let's show the results, and we can see 86% of us say it's SSH. And then you got 3 and 4% for all of the others. So there's a lot there to look at. 86% say SSH. That's a pretty strong number. And that's because everybody's done this at this point, I think. Practically all of us have done this. We've got a lot under SSH. There's TCP port 22 that you would use for SSH. Whenever I start going through these questions and trying to figure out what the right thing might be, although we talk a little bit about using SSH and not Telnet, once you get to the Security Plus exam, you'll notice there are times when we might be able to use Telnet from a security perspective. So although we often tell you never use Telnet, what we really mean is never use Telnet to do this type of terminal communication, because Telnet is in the clear. It's not encrypted at all, but SSH is encrypted. It's not something you have to worry about, because all the communication done with SSH is always going to be encrypted. Very, very useful tool. You should have your favorite SSH client running on your operating system, because you're certainly going to be using this when you configure a router, a switch, a firewall, or these days almost anything else that's on your network. And that's why 86% of you chose SSH. That is the correct answer. A is the correct answer for SSH. Now, HTTPS was also on here. HTTPS is the secure version of the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is commonly used for secure communication to a website. Here where it's not a website, we were trying to do encrypted terminal sessions. So although this matches the need we have for encryption, it's not the task that we need, which would be terminal communication. FTP is the File Transfer Protocol, which neither does terminal nor does encryption. So that's out the window. RDP is the Remote Desktop Protocol, which is close to being able to view encrypted terminal sessions. It is encrypted, or has the option to be encrypted. RDP, though, is for viewing an entire desktop, not just terminal sessions. So not the best choice for that. And then Telnet, as we've already mentioned, is the non-secure version of viewing terminal sessions. We want encrypted, so your answer would be A, SSH. Let's do another one. I've got another question for you. This question asks, which of the following technologies can be used to increase the memory bandwidth of a computer? Would it be ECC, CAS, parity, RAID, or multi-channel? Which of the following technologies can be used to increase the memory bandwidth of a computer? Is it ECC, CAS, parity, RAID, or multi-channel? There's a lot of acronyms today. What was I thinking when I made up these questions? I was thinking we were going to do a lot of acronyms, apparently. If you know the answer, go to ProfessorMaster.com/QA to lock in your answer. Should be a good one. We have to think about all of these different technologies and see which one best applies to this particular problem. In fact, this is one that being able to increase the memory bandwidth of a computer, that's going to be nice. If you can make that happen, that's going to be, that's valuable because that's a lot of communication. The communication between these days your CPU and the memory, there's a lot of data going back and forth. And if you can increase that bandwidth, you might effectively be able to increase the overall performance of your computer just by using one of these types of technologies. Which one would you use? That's the real question. Maybe I've given enough away on that one already. That was my thought process behind this. So that's my hint for you. I'm not sure that's a hint, but it's certainly the mindset I'm in when I'm thinking about how can I improve this particular system. And if you are not using this technology on your computer and your motherboard supports this technology, you could possibly improve the overall performance of your system just by taking advantage of this. We'll see if you can. Let's see how you answered with this one. The question again asked, which of the following technologies can be used to increase the memory bandwidth of a computer? Is it ECC, CAS, parity, RAID, or multi-channel? Let's see how you answered this one. 68% of you say multi-channel. We always say if we get over 50%, then we're doing pretty good. That's a pretty good number. Although 17% of you say RAID is what you would use to increase that memory bandwidth of your computer. 9%, almost double digits, say ECC. Oh, you're thinking memory, aren't you? That ECC memory, that's a good way to think. 4% of you said parity, 2% said CAS. So this becomes a challenge when you're trying to make sure your system is configured to run as fast as it possibly can. It's very possible that your computer has on it the ability to use multi-channel memory. This means that you would have the memory modules of your computer set up to be able to effectively balance the load between those. What the reality is, it's able to pull from both of those memory modules. If it's dual channel, it'll pull from two different memory modules at the same time. You do have to make sure that the memory you have in both of those modules, or 3 of those modules, or 4 of those modules, depending on if it is dual channel, triple channel, or quad channel, you have to make sure the memory is the same between them. That's the real important part. But if you do that and you separate that memory modules across 2 different slots that are in your memory, you can effectively double the bandwidth or triple or quadruple the bandwidth on your memory bandwidth. So you'll notice if you look at your motherboard and you happen to notice that the memory module slots are colored differently, that's a clue. It's not always this way, but it's often done this way, that you'll notice, hey, 2 of these modules are red and 2 of these modules are black. I wonder why. Well, that's because you're using a dual channel memory and you're able to put 2 memory modules in on the same color, and now you've effectively doubled the memory bandwidth. This can be a significant performance increase. So if you're someone who has built your own computer, or you have your own computer and you're wondering, do I have dual channel memory in here? What is this memory configured for? Make sure you're using either a utility that will show you your memory information, or open up your computer and have a look. See what it's configured for and see if your motherboard supports this. You might be able to increase that. You generally don't find a lot of triple channel or a lot of quad channel. It is out there. And we are adding more channel capabilities, especially as we move into higher speeds of memory. But right now, I think most of what you'll see is probably dual channel on a lot of motherboards. This changes dramatically as new evolutions of CPUs and motherboards are released. These things change dramatically. So in a year, we might be all running quad channel. We'll have to see, being able to work through that. Let's see how the answer on this one, by the way, is indeed multi-channel. If you answered E, 70% of you got that one right. 16% of you said RAID would be the way to increase memory bandwidth. And although RAID is a very useful way to increase the amount of data transferred from storage, like an SSD or a hard drive, it doesn't increase the memory bandwidth. So RAID is not what you would use to be able to increase memory. You would need a memory technology for that. And all of the other answers are memory technologies. For example, ECC is the not only being able to identify errors but correct errors in memory. Parity is the ability to identify errors but not correct them. And then, as you're probably familiar with your memory, if you've ever had to buy memory, they have a CAS value, which is referring to the delays that it takes or the amount of time it takes to request and receive information from that memory. That timing is very important because it can affect the overall throughput. This question was more asking about increasing memory bandwidth and one of the best ways to do it. In fact, the only option here in this list of 5 is answer E, multi-channel. 70% of you got that one absolutely right. We're doing really good on time. I will remind you that if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would be glad to send you an email telling you that you have qualified for a webinar category CEU. That's what CompTIA calls these. The way that you would do that is you would go to the top or the bottom of the CompTIA website. Not the CompTIA website, the Professor Messer website. You won't find this on the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com. At the top or bottom is a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link on the Professor Messer website, and it will ask you for your name, your email address. Put those in. In the subject line, put that this is the February 2022 A+ study group or something like that so I can recognize it. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, CAS. The super secret code word of the month is CAS. This is what you would put in, and you can also put anything else in the body of that message that you would like as well. I do read through every single one of these. I'm not able to respond back with every single one because I get hundreds of these every month, but absolutely put that in. I will then, in about a week, turn this around and send you an email that certifies that you must have watched this. I realize that this is not a requirement that CompTIA puts. CompTIA basically says if you went to a webinar, just tell us when you went. They will take it on your say that you were there. I just like to send an email just in case you're audited. That way you're locked in. You know exactly what the options are. CAS is the super secret code word of the month. Go to the Professor Messer website. At the top or bottom, click the Contact Us link. Send me a note with that information. Make sure you follow those directions. Those directions themselves are part of the process of obtaining the CEU. So if you don't follow that process, I'm assuming you didn't watch this. That's how that works. Plus, the process I use to send these CEUs is an automated macro that runs, and it only works if you follow those instructions. So there's a practical side to this as well. That's the reason I emphasize you following that task. It has a dual edge to it, if you will. Let's do another question before we run out of time in this first hour. I've got more to go through. This question is a cloud question that asks, click on my side, an IT team is charged a flat fee for cloud-based file sharing service. This fee does not change based on data stored or transferred. Which of the following best describes this model? Would it be rapid elasticity, non-metered, resource pooling, hybrid cloud, or PaaS? An IT team is charged a flat fee for a cloud-based file sharing service. This fee does not change based on data stored or transferred. Which of the following best describes this model? Is it rapid elasticity, non-metered, resource pooling, hybrid cloud, or PaaS? Question in the chat room about the CEUs. You can earn those CEUs whether you're watching this live or watching this on a replay. So you can go back to all of our replays and send me a CEU for all of them. Keep in mind, however, if you're doing this for your CompTIA renewal, I think for A+, they only accept 3 webinar category CEUs in a 3-year renewal period. So unfortunately, you can't watch 20 of these and earn all of the 20 credits that you need. You can only earn 3. I think that's right. Maybe it's 5. You'll have to look at the details on the CompTIA website to know exactly what number that happens to be, but they do limit you. You can't just do one thing a lot. They want you to do different things. Although these days, I think most people are really working towards using the CertMaster CE, which is more of a online renewal system. That's a more of a computer-based training. You don't have to collect CEUs anymore unless you really want to. You've got the option, which is really the good part, is having an option for that. How did we do with this one? The question asked, an IT team is charged a flat fee for a cloud-based file sharing service. The fee does not change based on data stored or transferred. Which of the following best describes this model? Is it rapid elasticity, non-metered, resource pooling, hybrid cloud, or PaaS? 75% of you think it's non-metered. But as I've learned with the cloud, you're never quite sure what the answer is. The next double digits is 11% say it's PaaS, platform as a service. 6% said hybrid cloud, 5% said rapid elasticity, and 3% said resource pooling. Why is it not resource pooling? That sounds like a pooling, doesn't it? But the real key here is we're transferring files, we're retrieving files, we're storing files, and no matter how much we save, retrieve, or store, costs us exactly the same amount of money. That means that is a non-metered service. If it was metered, we would have to pay depending on how much of it we were using. For example, if you go to ProfessorMesser.com and you purchase my course notes and you download the digital version, the system that's used to provide you with that download is one that, on my side, is metered. They bill me at the end of the month for how much that particular service was used. So if nobody buys course notes, I'm very sad, but I don't have to pay any extra money. But if there are a lot of people buy course notes, which makes me very happy, then I have to pay a little bit more for that file sharing service. That is an important consideration. That means that the service I'm using is, at least in this question, is a non-metered service. That's the one in this question where you just basically pay a flat fee. You store everything on the service. You can upload, download, store things. Doesn't matter. They might give you a max amount that you can use, but they don't bill you extra for it. They don't meter it. And at the end of the month, you pay exactly the same as you paid last month, and you're going to pay exactly the same amount next month. That's one that's, if you're using any type of file sharing service, you use Google Drive or Dropbox, that's a very common model for those types of services. And in this case, it's exactly the service that you should be using. It is one non-metered. 75% of you say non-metered is what it is, and that is the right answer. 11% of you said platform as a service. If this was a service that required you to build your own application and they gave you some pre-built modules that you could put together to build your own application on this service or on their platform, then it would be platform as a service. But this question didn't talk at all about you building out your own application. So there was really no clue here that would lead you down the path of platform as a service. This is not platform as a service. If anything, most of these cloud-based file sharing services like Dropbox, like Google Drive, those services are software as a service, which was not one of the options here. That's why the question very specifically said, which of the following best describes this model? The best option really is non-metered, answer B. Rapid elasticity is a cloud characteristic that allows the back-end applications to grow in capacity or shrink in capacity, depending on how many people need access to that resource. So it's very common that if you're working on a cloud-based system and back behind the scenes, they're monitoring the system, they notice, wow, it's getting very busy. Let's spin up some additional application instances so that we can support the large number of people coming to our website. You as the user have no idea they're spinning up these new instances. All you know is you're getting very good response time to this server, and that is called rapid elasticity because you're able to expand and decrease the amount of resources available in the cloud just by clicking a few buttons, or even being able to go to a website automatically happens behind the scenes. There may not even be buttons involved. It may be something automatic. Resource pooling means that you are collecting a lot of resources into one big place, and you effectively carve off those resources as you build additional cloud-based services. So in the case of rapid elasticity, for example, let's say our site becomes very busy and our system automatically decides we need to build out a new application instance. Where does this application instance come from? We need storage, we need memory, we need network. Where are all these resources coming from? No problem. I have an enormous pool of resources over here. I have pulled a bunch of memory. I pulled a bunch of storage space. I've pulled a bunch of network connections, and I just pull out of the pool to build out an automated cloud-based system. And as I break that system down, let's say I don't need the application anymore, we break those down. Those free resources go back into the pool for someone else to use afterwards. We also have on this list a hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is when we are using both a public cloud and a private cloud. There could be an application that takes advantage of both of those, or perhaps you have multiple applications, some that use a cloud that's public, some that use a cloud that's in our own data center that would be private. And a hybrid cloud is another good example of that, but it doesn't have any relationship to the amount we are being billed for storing files on a cloud-based system. That is not what a hybrid cloud is about at all. So in our case, the only answer here, the one that makes the most sense, is the non-metered. 76% of you say non-metered, and that is the right answer. Very, very good. Let's now, I know it's top of the hour, but let's fit in one more question before we are done today. This one is a troubleshooting question. It's one you might run into, so it might be a good one to go through. This question asks, a desktop computer has just made a loud popping noise and the screen has gone black. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it an SSD failure, a duplex mismatch, a faulty BIOS, a bad capacitor, or out of memory? A desktop computer has just made a loud popping noise and the screen has gone black. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it SSD failure, duplex mismatch, faulty BIOS, bad capacitor, or out of memory? If you think you know the answer, use that link that's on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See which one you think makes the most sense. This should be one. Well, if you haven't had to troubleshoot this, I think that's great. But there are times when you may have to troubleshoot this to figure it out. This might be good. You never know. It could be a number of different things. We'll have to see which one this one happens to be. Lock in your answer at ProfessorMesser.com/QA. A lot of you are locking your answer in pretty quick. I wonder if a lot of you have had to deal with this before. If you've worked in almost any environment for any amount of time, you probably have run into this one every once in a while. Let's see if we happen to know what this is. Everybody's locking in an answer, so I feel like everybody knows this one. Let's see if that's really the case. Let's see how we did with this one. The question asked, a desktop computer has just made a loud popping noise and the screen has gone black. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it SSD failure, duplex mismatch, faulty BIOS, bad capacitor, or out of memory? And let's show the results and see how you did. 83% of you say bad capacitor. I don't feel like I fooled anybody this month on these questions. Everybody did really well with the question this month. Bad capacitor, 83% of you to be able to do this. This is one where if you're ever in a case where you're trying to deal with or notice that a computer has made a loud noise, that suddenly something happened on the system, that's obviously not normal. The computer should, at the very least, just have a small noise of a fan in some cases. But if something is maybe rattling, it could be loose. That wasn't really our problem here. It wasn't really a rattling problem. If you're a scraping problem, that can sometimes indicate a hard drive issue. So that again, that's not our problem. Sometimes a fan, if there's something in the fan itself, you might, or if the bearings are going bad, you might hear clicking in there. That wasn't really our problem. Our problem was a popping noise, a pow. And suddenly, not only a popping noise, but everything goes black. Suddenly the system stops working. That's probably a blown capacitor. That's very similar, at least indicates, leads me towards a bad capacitor in the system. Sometimes the capacitors are something that you can identify before it fails. So you may notice capacitors will slowly lose the ability to work properly. For example, these are two capacitors next to each other. One capacitor very flat on top. All of the metal on top of this capacitor is closed. But notice the capacitor next to it. Not quite the same. It's bulging out at the top just a little bit. And we can sort of see, I'm going to zoom up, can sort of see on this one that it's not quite flat on the top, and we're starting to see some of the internal components leaking out of the capacitor. That means that we need to get this motherboard fixed immediately. That's a capacitor that either has failed or is in the process of failing, and it will certainly cause the system to have problems. Here's another shot of some capacitors having a problem. You can see a capacitor that looks pretty good here on the right. It's very flat. Another flat one here on the left. But look at this one right in the middle. It's got a little peak to it. It's a little popping out of that. That certainly indicates a problem with that capacitor. That immediately you're going to have to get that fixed. You should be able to recognize these and go, hold on, this system is very unstable in that current condition. We need to replace the capacitor or replace the motherboard itself. In an extreme case, the capacitors just blow completely apart. This is the example that I just gave where something went pow and everything went black. Well, there you go. This one absolutely went pow. You don't even see the outside pieces of the capacitor anywhere on here. It just sort of blew apart. It is not providing any capacitance at this point. You're going to need a new motherboard or fix all of those. It looks like it's on a motherboard. I'm trying to think if this looks like it's a interface that's on the system. So it doesn't look like it's in a power supply. It looks like it's actually in a motherboard. It's hard to tell from that. But boy, it is just, that is definitely, you should be able to absolutely look at that and go, well, that's not good. In fact, what's happening here? Did this get hit? It's kind of dented. There's just craziness going on. This one's puffed up. Both of those are puffed up. Maybe this one's okay. That's one just to replace the whole thing. And I think you'll be better in the long run. In fact, that is the bad capacitor. 83% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, 9% of you said an SSD failure. When an SSD fails, there's no moving parts. The only thing it really does, most common SSD failure is you're able to read from it, but not write to it. SSDs tend to fail in a usable form. Although there are times when an SSD can fail to both read and write. Always have a backup. We have 5% of you said a faulty BIOS. And although a faulty BIOS can create problems on a system, the BIOS chips themselves have a problem, or the storage where the BIOS is kept has a problem. Usually they don't make a noise when they fail. They don't make a popping sound. They just stop working. So again, no moving parts there to deal with, but very rarely do those make any type of noise at all. 2% of you said a duplex mismatch, which is a network adapter card configuration setting. There's no noises associated with that. And the worst possibility with a duplex mismatch is your network is not quite as fast as it normally would be. So that's not good either. We've also got out of memory. The out of memory that's here would put an error on your screen, or it may cause your system to reboot, but it won't make a popping noise. Wouldn't that be great if it just made a popping noise every time you ran out of memory? Had some type of issue that would make a noise every time you ran out of memory. Oh, you heard angels singing, you're out of memory. Oh, were there bells? You were out of memory. Doesn't work that way. The out of memory usually just shows you on the screen you're out of memory. Or maybe it just crashes the operating system and everything restarts. So that's another one that is certainly an issue, but not the issue we were looking for. In this case, a loud popping noise, the screen going black, certainly indicates some type of failure, usually of a capacitor, because they are storing so much of the power that when they fail with just amazing results, as you can see there. Not what you want to run into if you're someone trying to resolve a system. If somebody calls you and says, well, my computer doesn't work anymore, I heard a loud noise, I heard a loud bang, and now it's not doing anything. Well, that's probably what happened. You probably lost a capacitor in that mix. All the questions we did today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have a copy of these objectives. They will tell you everything you need to know to pass your A+ exams. That's a pretty useful set of resources, by the way, and they're free. Download them. They should be the first thing you download when you're studying. They should be the last thing you refer to before you go into the exam. Just use it as a checklist to make sure you've covered all of the topics. You'll find this at professormester.com/objectives. There's a link there that will take you over to the CompTIA website, or simply go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. It will take you right to the page. You will have no problem finding that. We do one of these study groups every month for each of my training courses. So our Core 1 study group was today, obviously. Our Core 2 study group is on Friday. So come back on the 11th for that, just in 2 days from now. Next week, we have our Network Plus study group, and our Security Plus study group is a week after that. We also have more next month. Our March study groups on the 8th and the 10th are for A+. The 16th is for Network Plus, and the 23rd for Security Plus. If you're ever wondering when the next event is going to be, or, for example, here, I changed the dates around. You know, things happened in my world that required me to shift everything this week. If you ever need to know where and when the next study group is going to be, go to professormester.com/calendar, lock in that calendar right there. You'll be able to see it. The second I change it, it changes on your side. So it's a great way to do it for the calendar. Go to the next live Core 1A+ study group is on March the 8th. That's a great way for the 1001. I also keep these on my Discord in the events channel. I keep an extra copy of the calendar right there. So you can either go to professormester.com/calendar or just go to the Discord and have a look at the events channel that's in my Discord. Well, can you believe we've gone through an hour of Q&A? Is it over already? Well, not really. We have an after show, so stick around for that. I'll take your questions from the chat room, and we'll be able to have a look at those. If you're in the U.S. or Canada, we have discounted vouchers ready for you on our website. You don't have to provide any coupon codes. There's no hunting around for a discount code. Simply go to professormester.com/vouchers. They're already discounted, and you get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook with that. Don't forget about my practice exams, my course notes, my success bundles, and much more. Go to professormester.com/1001success. And when you're between study groups, we've always got content and information for you that can help you pass your exams. Go to professormester.com/Twitter for our daily pop quiz question. We also have that same pop quiz question over on Instagram if you are an Instagrammer and you want a pretty picture with your daily pop quiz. And of course, all my videos are out on the YouTube. Go to professormester.com/YouTube. Well, thanks for being here in this first hour. Stick around for the after show where I'll take questions from the chat room. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Okay, there were a couple of things that we're going through. Let's see if I can. Well, that's not the right camera, is it? That's better. It's time for the after show, everybody. I want to quickly also mention, just at the end there, we got a super chat from Tony M in the chat room, a $10 super chat. Tony, thank you for your support, and not even a comment or question there. Tony just offered the $10 donation. We sure appreciate it. Always helps keep things running on this side. Also in the super chat, Caleb in the super chat is a $5 super chat. Caleb says, I have all of your A+ course notes and exams. Thank you so much for your support. Past 1001, congratulations. Now going for 1002. Do you have any tips for retaining these Linux commands in my noggin? And it's one that we'll start with that as we get into this after show piece. The way this works, by the way, is I am watching the chat go by in the after show. For those of you that have seen the studio setup, the chat that is right here is the one I've been watching. It's the one on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube watching, it's that chat. If you're on professormester.com/live, it's the same chat. So no matter where you are, I see the chat that's going through here. So that question from Caleb is a good one. Do you have any tips for retaining these Linux commands? And there are a lot of Linux commands on the A+ exam, especially the 1002 is where you're going to find a lot of them. And quite honestly, the Linux questions on there are also commands that work in Mac OS. So as soon as you know the Linux version of these, it's effectively the same thing on Mac OS, certainly extremely similar. One of the challenges with the Linux commands is there's a lot of them. I think if we look at the exam objectives, why don't I just pull up a set of exam objectives since I am here. Let me pull up. How do I not already have those here? I'm constantly referring to my exam objectives. It is a place that you should always go to if you ever have any questions about the exam, because everything is in the objectives. So let's have a look at the CompTIA exam objectives. I've got them up here on my screen. This is the one on operating systems. I think it's on the second page here. Under section 1.9, given a scenario, use features and tools of the Mac OS and Linux client desktop operating systems. The basic Linux commands consist of ls, grep, cd, shutdown, pwd versus passwd, mv, cp, rm, chmod, chown, iwconfig, ifconfig, ps, su and sudo, apt-get, vi, dd, and kill, which is what you want to do as soon as you have now gone through every single one of these exams, every single one of these commands. This is one that I think if you're working through Linux, the best way to remember these Linux commands for A+ is to do them on a keyboard with that list. Work through them with you typing them in, and not just typing them in and watching them go by on your screen, but examine the output for these as well. This is one that is going to be very useful. For some reason, for me anyway, I can read about a command. I can view the results of that command. Maybe I can passively watch a video that describes that command, and I get some of that. I get a little bit of information from those videos, at least something I can lock into my head. But for me, muscle memory is very powerful. Typing, and you've probably done this, when you have a certain password you always use, you don't even have to think about where your fingers are going on the keyboard. It's just a muscle memory automatic reaction. All you need that password, click, 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 boom, you're done. So whenever I see these commands, that's the first thing I think, why don't we type these commands in ourselves on a Linux prompt? But Professor Messer, I'm not running Linux. How do I do that? Well, you're right. That does become a little bit of an issue, but there's lots of ways to run Linux on your system and run through these commands. And probably the easiest way is to use a VM. Folks in the chat room are already mentioning this. Load up VirtualBox, load up VMware Player, load up almost anything and install Linux to that particular virtual environment. There's also a number of virtual environments that have already been created out there for Linux. I don't recommend those, at least if you're someone who's just starting with Linux. Don't load up a predefined VM that somebody just stuck on the internet because you have no idea what's in there. That's certainly an insecure thing for you to do. Instead, go out to Mint, go out to Ubuntu, go out to even CentOS or Red Hat. Grab a copy of an ISO. Go out Kali Linux. If you're going to begin security, that's a good one to load up anyway. Load up any of those Linux distributions, install them, and even if you've never installed Linux, it's really, really quite easy. They go right through the screen. It's very easy to follow what's going on. You install that into a VM, takes just minutes, and then you can start up your Linux configuration and start playing around with those commands without worrying that you're going to mess up anything on your existing system. So I think that'd be a good choice for you to be able to use those. This is very, very useful. I think if I was to look at all the VMs on my machine, let's bring this up. I got lots of VMs I play around with all the time, and might as well give you a little picture into my world. Here is the Linux list of Linux machines. I'm running Mac OS as my primary desktop. So I have in Mac OS, or at least the current version of this hardware that I'm using for Mac OS, I have the option to use Boot Camp, which will reboot this into a full-blown copy of Windows. But I can also run that same Boot Camp as a VM right in my existing Mac OS without having to reboot. So that's one of my VMs. I have my website, ProfessorMesser.com. I have a local version of that I use for installing software and making sure it works before deploying it into production. I have Windows 11 on here. I have Kali Linux. I have some operating systems that I use for exploiting systems. I have a testing server for mobile. I have a fuzzer. There's Windows 10. There's Linux. I have Windows Server on here. This keeps going. I have a server and a domain user. I'm using that right now because I'm building some new videos that has some domain functions in it. Be looking for those in the next number of months. Now, why would we need that? Well, maybe there's a new version of the A+ exam that requires you to know a little bit about Active Directory. So that's in there. Testing server, there's a VMware ESXi6.x if you're doing VMware. I've got more Windows Server down here, an old Windows Server. I haven't used that one in forever. And a Windows Server 2003. So I just got VMs all over the place. Look at all those. And they're just all sitting on my system. I think some of them may not be there. Let me try starting up the Windows Server 2003. What's the worst that can happen, right? And it's going to tell me, yeah, it's not there. So that's one that I have there, and I think I moved those files off to my NAS. But I could move them back if I wanted to. Right now, though, I'm using Windows Server 2022. That one is on my system. We can start it up. It's loading up, actually, right here. And since we're talking about Linux, let's get Linux running. So that's running Windows on this system, and I'm going to let that continue to run. It's going to boot up Windows Server on here. Why don't I just let it sit there since we're talking about this? And it's the after show, and we sort of are just in the mode of answering questions and showing this and demonstrating. So Windows Server 2022 is running on here. I've got a separate VM running Windows 10, and then I have that connected to the domain so I can do some group policies and push out changes, and we can see what those changes are. I can do folder redirection. All of that's on there. So as you can see, Windows Server is just a dog to run on this VM. I also don't have it optimized. I gave it just the minimum amount of RAM. I don't know why I did that because I have just tons to work through. Control Delete to unlock. And there's the domain. We'll log in. And there's my Windows Server. And Server Manager comes up by default. So that is what I use when I do some type of work with Windows Server. We're going to put that over here. But we were talking about Linux. So let's load up and run an Ubuntu. I haven't run that one. That's one that I actually loaded up for this particular task, for memorizing or using command lines. This is one of the VMs I set up to demonstrate this in my videos. This is the latest version of Ubuntu. I think I downloaded this last week and installed it. So this is pretty fresh. If I can remember my password for this VM, there it is. And let's make this full screen so we can see what's going on. So there we are. Now I've got Linux here, and in this Linux, I can start playing around with other options. So we can, this is Ubuntu, every Linux works a little bit differently in the different tools and options that you might have available. But you can now go through and use this Linux on your main operating system with and not have to do anything with your local computer. Let's bring up a terminal, and now I'm able to work in this terminal. See if I can make this a little bit. Can't remember the keystrokes for this system to make it bigger. I thought it was this one. It's not. So this is one that now if you wanted to run an LS, you wanted to run these commands for a PWD, all these commands work in this terminal screen. And now no matter what I do on the system, I could break this Linux completely. I could really do anything I wanted. And this Linux allows me to now run a full-blown version of Linux and test and use all of those commands. So I think that's a great way to do it. If you've never used VirtualBox, which is free, you've never used VMware Player, which is also free, somewhat free, But I would absolutely do this. If you're trying to figure out how do you make this happen, you download VirtualBox, you download the installation ISO for Ubuntu, and you install it from there. It takes you minutes, literally takes minutes, and then you've got this to be able to work with. I personally recommend VirtualBox because it is one that really is free and it runs on many different operating systems and it runs great. So that's my recommendation if you're ever trying to do anything with Linux and you need just a little bit more help. You need a little bit more hands-on time to be able to lock in those commands. I think it's a great way to do it. Let's power off this VM. It powers off and takes me right back to, once this powers down, I'm back to my Mac OS desktop. How easy is that, right? The VMs, I do have a lot of VMs on my system, as people in the chat room were mentioning, but I need them. It's important. There's a lot going on. And being able to, how much memory do you need? How much RAM do you need for running a VM? Well, you need some. Now, Linux is not, at least doesn't require a lot of memory. So if you wanted to allocate 2 gig of memory at a minimum, you'd probably be okay if all you're doing is working in the terminal. So if you have more memory that you can allocate, try 4 gig. But you certainly need more than that. You don't need more than that if you're running Linux. For the purposes of going the command line anyway. 4 gig might even be overkill. 2 would probably be just fine. How is mine configured? Let's see how my Ubuntu Linux is configured on the system. Since we're talking about that Ubuntu I just ran, here we go. It is a storage size for that system is 14 gig, basically because there's a method within, I use Parallels as my hypervisor on Mac OS. And there's not a Parallels version for Windows. It's a Mac only product. But when you're setting it up, you have the option, I want to create a new VM, and it gives you a list of all of these free VMs that it will set up for you from scratch. And you just point to Ubuntu and it just creates one. So this is the default configuration. It looks like it has about 10, 15 gig of drive space that it's using. It doesn't even need that. I could have done it on much less. And the memory I've got associated with this is 2 gig. So what you just saw, 2 gig over 2 processors. I got lots of processors in here. So not a lot of memory allocated to this. Very, very simple. So that's what I would recommend too if you're trying to find an easier way to understand these Linux-based commands. That's a great way to do it. And it will work probably with Linux, works on practically everyone's computer because you have enough memory to, even if you don't have a lot of memory on your system, I'll bet you have 4 gig or 8 gig. Once you start Windows, you probably have at least 2 gig that you could use to start a VM like that because it's not going to use all 2 gig. It's only going to use the 2 gig if it needs it. So the memory management of these hypervisors is pretty good. You can run practically any Linux VM to do terminal on 4 gig of memory on a Windows system, not a problem. So that's what I would recommend too. If you're trying to find a good way to do that, that's what I would use. I really should do a video like that of starting up, downloading VirtualBox, downloading Ubuntu or Mint or something, and then loading it up just to show how easy it is. It's so simple. Maybe I haven't done that because it really is very simple. But I think watching someone step through it would be pretty good. Other questions in the chat room. Do I recommend buying the CompTIA A+ vouchers that include the CertMaster Practice and the CertMaster Labs? Well, you certainly could. CompTIA provides a number of different tools that you can add on to a voucher. And they offer different things with their vouchers on their site that I don't, which is, for example, the CertMaster Practice or CertMaster Labs. Now, what I found, though, is that you don't get a huge discount. You do get a pretty good discount on the voucher, actually, but you still have to pay kind of the full price for CertMaster Practice and CertMaster Labs. But the good part is CertMaster Practice and CertMaster Labs are both very good products. The CertMaster Practice has tons of practice questions, just an enormous amount, and it really helps you understand where you're strong and where you're weak. So that's pretty good. The other thing is the CertMaster labs. The labs on the CompTIA site are also quite good. Extremely valuable tools, especially if you haven't used operating systems or managed operating systems a lot, or you want an easy way to pop open a Linux command prompt. They've already created the lab for you. You just start the VM on the CertMaster labs, and you've now got a Linux machine running in the cloud. You don't even have to load anything on your local computer. So if you're concerned about running VirtualBox, you don't understand the installation process, or it's just something you don't want to do, that is a good option for you as well, or the CertMaster labs. I think that's a certainly a viable option because the labs run in the cloud-based environment that's out there, and you don't have to download anything. Great way to do it. I think that'd be a good one to run through. What I'd love to do, because I just set up Windows Server, I just set up Windows 10 domain user, it would be great to show you how I did that. So if you wanted to build your own set of VMs to do Active Directory, not only would that be good for perhaps an upcoming A+ exam, but you might find that when you go into an interview process for an entry-level position, they're going to ask you, what experience do you have working with Active Directory? Have you done a lot of password changes? Have you done a lot of account changes? Do you know how to check to see if someone's profile is set up properly? Do you know how to check to see if somebody's folder is being properly redirected? Those are great questions for an entry-level position. And unless you've sat down with Active Directory, you would have no idea. But we don't use Active Directory at home. So how do I build out a system that is going to show me how to use Active Directory in a home environment? Well, that's basically what I'm going to show in an upcoming video. So it'd be great to be able to show you how I created that world. That might be a good one to do. There's a lot of good options for that already on the YouTube, though. So I don't want to necessarily recreate the wheel, but it might be nice to have a version that was specific to what you needed to know for A+. I think that's the scope that I'm coming from. So that's what I would recommend too. And those are not necessarily concerns for the existing A+ exam. The A+ exam doesn't go very deep at all, if any, really, into Active Directory. This would be for something that may be upcoming, just to give you an idea of the scope of that. Might be really useful. Let's see. Another question in the chat room. From my perspective, do I do A+ first or do I do Network Plus first? I think that's one that would be useful to know. This is a common question I get because I'll get someone saying, which one do I do right now? Security Plus, Network Plus, or A+? What do I do first? Okay, well, that depends on what you're trying to do. The value of a certification is wholly based on what you plan to do with it. That is everything. So I don't know your particular personal situation. And this is where you need to kind of evaluate your world, is what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get an entry-level position into IT? Are you trying to get a position with a security operations center, maybe an entry-level position? Those two jobs may be asking you for different credentials. The entry-level help desk may be asking you for an A+ cert. The entry-level SOC, Security Operations Center, may be asking you for a Network Plus certification. Well, it just depends on which one you're going for, what the employer would like you to have. And that's why I mentioned in my video, how to get a job in IT with no experience, I mentioned that you need to create a spreadsheet for your particular situation. Look at all the jobs in your area, everybody who's hiring in your neck of the woods, and create a line for every job that you feel you're qualified for, and evaluate what are the criteria they're looking for. Are they looking for a certain formal education? What are they looking for? Are they looking for industry certifications? What are they looking for? Are they looking for other types of knowledge with other applications? What applications are they looking for? And make a list of these for all of those open positions. When you're done making this list of 10 or 20 or 30 jobs, you should be able to see a trend, or at least be able to see that, wow, a lot of these companies are asking for A+, only 2 of them ask for Security Plus. If I was trying to cover all of my bases in the best way possible, maybe I'd go with A+. Or maybe you live in the DC area, the District of Columbia here in the United States. Washington, D.C. is a huge Department of Defense and federal employer, and a huge number of jobs in that particular segment want you to have Security Plus. So after creating your spreadsheet, you may find 90% of these jobs want me to have Security Plus. Well, there's your answer. You need to go get Security Plus. So it's different depending on where you are. It's different depending on what you want to do, and it will change over time. So have a look at your particular goals, what you're trying to do, and have a look to see what employers want you to have. Now, if you're not doing this to get a job or get a better job, then it doesn't matter so much. But I'm kind of approaching this from the perspective of what most people coming to my site are coming here for, which is to get a job in IT or to get a better job in IT. And I think for that, you need to figure out, maybe take a step back and figure out, what am I trying to do? And once you determine what the end goal is, you can very easily create a path that gets you to that end goal. You can't just, and I see this all the time on my site, you cannot just show up and go, all right, I'm going to get the A+, I'm going to get the Network Plus, I'm going to get Security Plus, I'm going to get one of the Microsoft certs, I'm going to get my CCNA. Now, what can I do with that? I don't know. Why'd you do that? Why did you go get those 5 certifications? Well, I thought it'd be good. Certainly, an employer would want these 5 certifications. And my response to that is, I don't know anybody who wants those 5 certifications. So it's good to have knowledge of IT. And I think all of those certifications are valuable. All of them teach you very good skills. All of them eventually may be certifications that are important for you to have in your pocket. But we're trying to get a job or get a better job. So you need to narrow down the focus. In fact, if you have all 5 of those certs and you've never had an IT job, I probably would tell you first, don't tell an employer you have all 5 of these. You're going to overqualify yourself before you even walk in the door. Imagine if I was trying to hire someone for a help desk and your resume came across my desk and it says, oh, you have A+. Oh, you have Network Plus. Oh, you have Security Plus too? Yeah, you have a Microsoft Azure cert and you have a CCNA? Wow, I don't know if this is the best fit for you on this entry-level help desk position, because I feel like once you get into the job, you're going to be very bored. You seem to be overqualified for this, so I'm not even going to put you in the consideration. When in reality, you've never had an IT job. You're probably this job probably applies to you very well, because you have a good knowledge of what was on the A+ exam, but you've told the employer so much about what you have done that now the employer has a different perception of the reality. So always focus on the reality. I have another set of videos, I'm sort of plugging a lot, but I have another set of videos, and this is in the video description for this study group, of 5 reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And then I have a follow-up to that, which is 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And that's one where I tell you that every job you apply for, you should be customizing your resume. And your resume customization doesn't mean write a new resume every time. It means that there are certain aspects of your resume that you should tweak to specifically focus on what the employer is looking for. You're trying to match their job description perfectly, because that gets you through the door. That gets you an interview. And that's what we're trying to do with a resume, is get you an interview. And I show you in the video, you may be thinking, well, how do I do that? How do I customize a resume and create a customized cover letter for every single job posting? That seems like a lot of work. It isn't. And in my video, I show you just how minor these changes can be and what a dramatic effect they can be on the final result. So make sure you have a look at those videos too. They're very short. They go through 10 different things in both of those videos that you need to know about. Some are very obvious. Some you may not have realized. But they are something that can maybe help you focus and hone down your resume to exactly match a job posting. That way you know you're not going to overreach. Now, if you get into an interview and they say, well, do you have any networking knowledge? and you have your CCNA, but you haven't told them that, you can tell them, oh, I have worked a little bit with Cisco switches and Cisco routers. It's an exciting world. I'd love to do that someday. Maybe this job puts me in a position that later on I can go work for the networking team. I think that's a great response. You don't even have to tell them you have a CCNA. In fact, I probably wouldn't if I was in that position, because I don't want to scare them away, me thinking I have this higher level cert. So I think that's another thing to think about, is there's value in the knowledge. But there's also value in handing off the knowledge to other people and how you would do that. So I think it's a balancing act, but one you need to become familiar with, because you don't want to do that. I don't want to have somebody throw your resume out. You might be perfect for a job. You might have exactly the skills they want, but your resume is written in a way that they have an understanding that maybe this isn't a good fit at all, and they don't even consider you. I think that's pretty important. Also in the chat room, is the MS900 a good alternative to A+ for entry-level help desk, or is it more of a supplement to A+? I don't know that I've even looked at the Microsoft certification since we started staying inside. They changed a lot with their exams and what they were focusing on for the Microsoft exams. The MS900 is a Microsoft 365 fundamentals. Here it is. The 365 fundamentals are pretty good. They will certainly focus you in on what people are trying to do with Microsoft 365, and practically all companies are using 365 now. And you may find on a job posting that people are asking for the MS900. It goes beyond A+. A+ sort of gets you the foundation, and then you can add the 365 fundamentals on top of that. It's not a bad 1-2 punch, really. If you're looking for a Microsoft cert to go along with your CompTIA A+ cert, that might be a good one if you find that a lot of employers in your area are looking for people that have knowledge with 365, which these days I think most are. Practically everybody is either shifted to the cloud-based Microsoft world, or they are in the process of moving to the Microsoft cloud world. So I think that would be a good one to go through. As long as the employers are looking for that. It's the same problem we always run into. Does anybody want that cert? I think for that one, a lot of employers probably do. But it will depend on your area, depends on what they're putting in their job postings. Your mileage will certainly vary, so make sure you have a look at that. Another question, how do we get better at reading complex scenarios on the exam? Well, that is a challenge in itself. Fortunately, the exams have gotten a lot better in recent years about how the questions are posed. So they are not as much reading comprehension exams as they used to be. That said, there's still a lot of reading on these exams. They are not trivia questions. I mentioned earlier in the study group, you don't get a lot of questions that ask you, what does HTTPS stand for? You're never going to see a question like that. Those trivia questions, or what I call flashcard questions, this is not Beyonce. This is a flashcard question. Here's the question, answer. You don't get a lot of flashcard questions on the exam. You get a lot of questions that talk about a scenario, usually 1 or 2 sentences, like the ones we went through today. A system administrator has heard this loud popping noise. The screen went black. What do you think it is? I think that's a pretty good exam question. I think that's a good comparison to what you might find on an actual exam. It doesn't go into a whole lot more detail than that. Now, for those of you that took maybe older Security Plus exams, it was like reading a novel for some of these. Just ridiculous. But even now, they've toned down those questions on the exam. So the questions themselves are usually 1 or 2 sentences. Now, performance-based questions are a completely different thing. Performance-based questions are drag and drop. There can be multiple options. You're putting things in a particular order. You're putting things in the best place. You're matching things together. That's a different scenario. But there are certainly, for the multiple choice-based questions, they're relatively easy to read through. The challenge is trying to determine really what is going on with that question and what are they asking for. And what I have found with a number of practice exams you will find on the internet is that sometimes you will run across questions that are poorly written. They're kind of vague in what they're asking for. And you may find that some of the answers are either don't make sense or there are multiple answers that could technically answer the question. We call these in the industry bad questions. If you ever run into a scenario where you're going through a set of practice questions and you think these are not very good, I don't think these are really good, I'm not getting a very clear direction on what the answer should be, then it's probably a bad question. Throw it out, go find somewhere else to get your questions from. I will tell you on the exam, the question you get and the available answers, that there will be a clear and obvious answer if you know what they're asking for, if you know your stuff, if you really understand the material, it will be very clear what the answer is. You will not get, extremely rare to see on an exam, a question that is vague in some way or that doesn't quite point out or direct you towards the correct answer. All of the questions on the exam are really good about what the most obvious and very clear answer should be. And if you know your stuff, it will be very obvious to you. I get a lot of emails in my inbox all the time of people that say, I was on this third-party site, and here's a question I got, and here are the answers, and I don't agree with it. I agree. I don't spend I can't spend any time with these. I get a lot of these types of emails. All I do is kind of send it back to you and go talk to that website and tell them that their question is bad and their answers are bad then. First, I can't do anything about that. The best answer I can give you is, yeah, that's a bad question. Yeah, those answers are bad. I don't know what to tell you. Those are bad. Don't use those. That's my response. It's not a great response. But I tell people, no, that's just bad. Those are just not good questions. The good part, though, is if you are asking someone else, sort of like you're wanting to know, is this milk really bad? Like you look at this question, you go, look at this. Is this bad? Now, if you're at the point where you're asking other people if this is a bad question, guess what? It's a bad question. You don't have to ask anybody. You know it's a bad question. You now know enough about these topics. You now have learned enough about these topics that you could smell a bad question. So if you're at the point where you are questioning the questions, then you are right where you should be with your training. You are right where you should be with learning these topics, because if you can recognize a bad question, then you can also answer a good question. You're now at the point where you're able to really determine the difference on those. So don't worry so much about those. And I'm sorry if you send me an email and I just send you back this sort of stock answer that says, unfortunately, I'm not able to respond to third-party questions. I would recommend contacting the author of the question to be able to provide you with some information. I apologize in advance that that's something that I just have to send out. Otherwise, I would literally be spending all day answering other people's badly written questions, which it's not fair to you at all that you would have to be going through that. But I think ultimately the person who wrote it is probably the best place to go. I've written some bad questions, and you guys have sent me emails to go, you know, you really kind of could have gone through this either in different directions. You could have done this another way, and it may have been a way that I didn't think of. You know what I do? I go back to the question, I change it. I update it so that it is very clear on what the correct response should be. I spend a lot of time on my practice questions making sure, first, that they have a flavor of an actual exam so that you have some practice with that. I'm covering topics that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives because the exam doesn't go off topic. I don't know why these third-party exams do, but mine do not. And I want to be sure that the answer I'm providing is clear and obvious and not in any way vague, or not in any way could there be a different answer there. It needs to be very clear that if you know your stuff, you should know the answer. So that's my focus on these. And if I mess it up, I can change it, which for some reason, I don't know why other places don't, but it's an easy one. It's on the net. It's digital. Just make a change. And I can screw up questions real good. I'm good. I write a lot of questions. Sometimes I write bad questions, so I'll just update them. So they're good questions. there's always a chance to improve from the things that you've done. And I think there's always a chance to do this. And I've been writing daily pop quiz questions now for, I think, 7 or 8 years. So I've kind of gotten in a mode of understanding what I want the question to look like, what I want the answers to be, and how I'm kind of structuring them for you. So that's why whenever you see my questions, they are a little bit different than what you find online because of that. Let's do some more questions from the chat room. How are we on time? We're in pretty good shape. I'll just take not a question, but in the chat room, Justin in the chat room says, passed my Network Plus 008 this past weekend with the help of my course. Congratulations on your Network Plus certification. Plus, you got the new one, the Network Plus 008, which I think most people are probably working on right now. The 008 is a good exam. They really focused on exactly what you need to know for Network Plus. Network Plus in itself is a big exam to work through. If you've ever had to deal with that, it's a big exam. So I think if you're someone who's working on your Network Plus, I think that's a good one to have. So congratulations on your Network Plus certification. There is quite a bit on the exam about power. One of the questions that came up just now is about power. So I'm going to bring up my exam objectives because I think this is a really good example of what you would find on the exam. The question was specifically about PoE and EOP. This is where you kind of get into a weird world of things. So if you go to your 220-1001 A+ exam objectives, there is a section 2.2. This is a networking section of the Core 1 exam. Compare and contrast common networking hardware devices. You will find there is power over Ethernet, PoE, and Ethernet over power. Wait, it's the same words, just in a different order. What's going on here? So this is one of those situations also that I think as the years have gone on, certain technologies that were very popular 3.5 years ago may not be as popular today. And I think you'll see an example of this probably when the new exam objectives are released. Power over Ethernet is an Ethernet cable that we're putting power on. It's probably one of the most common ways to power devices in the field. If you are running in your home, we even use PoE at home. If you have a video monitoring system or you have security cameras in your home, those security cameras are probably connected over Ethernet, and they're probably powered by putting power onto the Ethernet cable so that you don't have to run a separate Ethernet or a separate power connection for that camera. And that's the way we used to have to do things. If you were putting an access point, a camera, or some other networking device out in the ceiling, outside the facility, or just anywhere in your network, and you wanted to power that device, then you not only needed to run an Ethernet cable, you also needed to have an electrician show up and run power so that you can plug the thing in and power it. Well, what we did was put the power on the Ethernet cable. Of course, that makes perfect sense. So let's run a cable, just one single cable, plug it in with Ethernet, and now the device is powered. So you plug in the Ethernet connection for your camera, the camera suddenly comes to life because it's getting power from that Ethernet connection. If you are plugging in an access point in the ceiling, you plug in that access point to Ethernet, suddenly the access point starts working because it's getting power from the Ethernet cable. If you are at home, you don't see this much in a enterprise, but at home, you might see Ethernet over power, although I would argue probably not as much of this as you might see other places. This is a technology that has not really been popular at all in the enterprise, and it's rarely used at home except in very specific situations. This is Ethernet over power. You know, we have all these power outlets all over our houses, all over our businesses. What if we could just run the Ethernet on the existing power cables that are in our house? That seems to make sense. There are some significant downsides to this. Bandwidth is one of those. The other is just making sure that those wires are all connected into the same circuit so that, or at least the same panel box, so that it's able to communicate between all of those connections. But it also, unfortunately, creates a lot of excess RF radio frequency energy that is heard on other radio frequency bands. So you can, in some cases, be creating more noise over the spectrum by using Ethernet over power. But if you are, let's say you've got an access point on the 3rd floor and you have a computer in the basement and you don't have a cable connected and it's too far away for wireless, you could plug in a Ethernet over power connection into a power block, a power outlet on the 3rd floor, and plug another version of that into a power outlet in the basement. And as long as those power systems are connected, now Ethernet can run between them. Not a bad technology. And at least for limited bandwidths and being able to use an existing infrastructure without having to run in a new cable, Ethernet over power, not a bad thing. I just don't see as much of that these days as we used to, probably because we are already pre-wiring everything these days. If you're moving into a new house, we already know you're going to want Ethernet everywhere. We've also been able to extend the capabilities of our wireless networks, especially over 5 gig and 2.4 gig. We've been able to do different things with those technologies to extend and improve bandwidth. So the usefulness of having Ethernet over power, probably not as much of a need today as what we used to have. So that's one that I think just from the negatives on Ethernet over power probably were a little bit too much for most people to implement. But if you have a particular use case, Ethernet over power might be a good option. These days, we have so many people that are doing mesh networking with wireless. It makes it so easy. You can put a wireless connection on the 3rd floor. You could put a mesh in between repeater, if you will, on maybe even the 2nd or 1st floor, and it's close enough now to be able to communicate to the basement. And on top of that, we have so many more devices in our homes that are wireless only, especially the Internet of Things devices, that we don't ever have to plug into a wired Ethernet connection with those. So that's how that works. Do most Ethernet cables have power capabilities? The power over Ethernet doesn't require a special cable. It requires special equipment that you're plugging the cable into. So you don't have to worry about having the right Ethernet cable. Power over Ethernet works on any Ethernet cable. There's different types of power over Ethernet. There's different ways to get the power onto the cable. I talk about some of the differences in my videos, but there are extensive differences. And you just have to make sure that for the type of system you're plugging into, that you're using a cable that perhaps is wired with all 8 wires instead of perhaps 4 wires to be able to do that. I have one Ethernet connection that I have an external PTZ, a pan tilt zoom camera, and it requires more power than the existing PoE switches that I have. I have an older PoE switch that's plugged into. So I have a midspan. I have an injector right in the middle of that connection that adds more power to the Ethernet cable, enough power to be able to run that larger camera that's outside. So you may find different scenarios. You just have to read the exactly what the switch, the device, and both of those are expecting and make sure they match up. What if you plug in a PoE cable to a non-PoE device? There's no such thing as a PoE cable. There's no such thing as a well, there are non-PoE devices, but the cable is not the issue. What you're running over the cable is the important part. I think what you meant to ask is, what if you plug in a device that has a power over Ethernet on the switch, you plug it into a device that is not a power over Ethernet device, nothing happens. PoE is smart enough to know that you're doing that, and you're fine. We're good. It's not going to add more power to the system than it's ready for. It's not going to blow anything up. You're not going to plug it in and see sparks. None of that's going to happen. It just won't power it because it doesn't need the power from the Ethernet. Is the PoE injector easy to replace if I have issues? It is. I have a picture of this. This is section 2.2. So why don't I just pull up the video? You can see the pictures from my configuration. This would be 2.2 network devices. And in the A+, I've got pictures of the switch. I've got the switch that I happen to have in here, and I've got pictures of the injector that I'm using. So here is the switch. There we go. Put it here, do this. So this is a picture of the switch. Probably should have done a little bit of work with this. Could I have really just fixed some of the image? Would have been nice. Let's enhance some of this so you can actually see the switch a little bit better. It's not great, but you kind of see where I'm going after there. So that's the switch. It's a PoE switch. It even says on there it's a 10-port gigabit PoE plus managed switch. I've got only a couple of devices plugged in right here, but each one of these interfaces allows me to do power over Ethernet on all 8 of those interfaces. It's a very small managed switch that I have in there to be able to do that. So PoE is available in all of these if the device needs it. If it doesn't need PoE, it just is an Ethernet connection without power. Now, one of these connections is plugged, in fact, I think it's this one right here, is plugged into this device. This is the injector. So I'm plugging in with my data, and the other connection here is the PoE connection that is providing the power to the camera. And it's this big injector that's just in the way. I should have really looked at the specs on this, but you can see it's outputting as much as 60 watts for this. Lot going on, but it's really it has 2 interfaces. Could not be easier. There is what we call technically in the industry a Gazinta interface and a Gazata interface. So this is really just matching these 2 things together and creating a link, sort of like putting 2 cables together with a coupler, except this coupler happens to put power over the connection. Pretty useful to have, and works like a champ. Works great. Yeah, so PoE is just the normal Ethernet cable, just with power on it. That's it. It's that easy. Now, I say it's that easy, but of course there are many different flavors of PoE. There are different standards that have been created through the years. I talk about some of those in the video where I talk about the differences between PoE, probably not so much in A+, but in my Network Plus, I go through PoE, PoE+, PoE++. So these standards have been updated through the years because we created PoE and thought, well, this is good if it could only support larger devices. Okay, how about PoE+? We can put more voltage over this. We can have support for larger systems to power. Great. Well, that's not enough. Let's do more. Let's do PoE++. We could potentially even power laptops over our Ethernet connection. You can technically do that if you have a laptop that supports it, but that just gives you an idea of how much you're able to do with the PoE. Pretty powerful, pretty useful. I think all the switches I use these days are all PoE switches. So I have, in my home, I have 2 switches. In the studio, I have 1 switch. Really, in the studio, I have 3 switches, but let's just say 1. They're all PoE. Almost all of them are PoE. Some are not. I have some 24 port switches that are not. Because the problem when you buy PoE, guess what? It's more expensive. So 8 ports of PoE is a reasonable cost. When you get 24 ports of PoE on the same switch, it's using more power, obviously. It's got louder fans. There's a lot of negatives to doing PoE, and it costs more. All right, well, what if I only have 4 devices that need PoE? All right, well, I'll get a smaller switch that only has 8 ports of PoE, and this particular switch does not have a fan. This is passively cooled. It has a heat sink. So this is perfect for the studio because no noise is perfect for a studio. You don't want anything making noise. So this device makes no noise. And then just underneath it, which you can't see, is a 24-port switch that does not do PoE, but because it does not have the same power requirements, therefore does not get as hot, and it also does not have fans. So there's always an advantage and disadvantage, isn't there? So for the purposes of a library, a studio, or a place where you need it quiet, the fans, how many fans and when they are used is a pretty important consideration. So in my case, I make sure that as few devices as possible have fans inside of them. So all of my networking equipment is silent. That's just one less thing I have to worry about. Now in my studio, I've got a lot of other devices here. My Mac is also passively cooled unless it gets super hot, and then fans will kick in, but those fans are very quiet. I don't think it ever runs unless I'm rendering something. You do notice them when they're running, but most of the time, as you have heard on this particular live stream, it's never turned on. So we're good. iPad doesn't have a fan. This Mac Pro has a fan. It also doesn't turn on unless it's also highly utilized, so it's quiet. One thing that does have a fan, and you don't hear it, right in front of me is this switch. This is a video switch from Blackmagic. This is doing the 4K video switching. It's this console that's up here that has all these boxes of all the videos. That's what's creating that display, is this device right here. So as I move from channel to channel on here, you can see it's moving up here. As I touch these buttons, it is moving the video. It has a fan inside of it, but the fan is so quiet because they know that this equipment will be used in a video. So another example of why it's important to have devices that either do or do not have a fan, depending on what you're doing. PoE, I don't mention this in the PoE part of the video, but it is a consideration if you're doing this in a home or a library or somewhere where you just don't want to hear fans all the time. And in a home, you don't think about it, but in your house, you don't want to have just your house humming all the time. It would be great if it was silent. And if you go into any of my closets where I have equipment, I have an upstairs closet, I have a downstairs closet where I have my networking equipment, it's silent. The only place where there's a little bit of noise is upstairs. All of my security cameras go back to a central network security camera storage device. The one I'm using is from Synology. So I have a Synology unit up there. It's a NAS that is collecting all the video and storing it for a month. I can go back over a month and look at any of the video from my home. The NAS, though, is built with almost silent fans in it. The fans are always running, but they're very quiet. It's only 4-drive unit. So even though it's in a closet, even though it does have fans, if you're outside the closet, you can't hear it. That's how quiet it is. So you have to kind of make those decisions for equipment when you're plugging them in, figuring it out. In the chat room, this is more of a product question. Stephen asks, is there a way to get the Exam Hacks ebook if you've already purchased the Notes and Exams combo? I'm outside the United States, so I can't buy the voucher. Unfortunately, no. The Exam Hacks ebook used to only be available with my Success Bundle. So there is a way you could get the Exam Hacks ebook. That's a little bit of overkill if you only wanted the book. The Exam Hacks ebook is good, but I don't know that you would need to pay an extra amount of money for the Success Bundle if all you want is the Exam Hacks ebook. That doesn't make sense either. So if you already have the Success Bundle, then you have the Exam Hacks ebook. And obviously, if you're outside the United States, those vouchers can't help you. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that now. There are a number of people outside the U.S. that have asked about that, however. So I've considered or thought about some ideas of what we could do for that. But right now, there's no other way to do it. I just have not come up with a good solution there. So a question from Steve in the chat room. This is a good one because this is one where I actually saw this situation, a conversation on Reddit about this very week. So Steve says, thanks to your videos, notes, and practice tests, passed my A+ about a month ago. The problem I'm having now is landing an interview with no experience. They all say 1 to 3 years experience help. The answer to this one is relatively ridiculous. Ignore their experience requirements completely. Just ignore them. You will find job postings constantly that make no sense. That someone is looking for experience with a technology They want 10 years of experience with this technology, but the technology's only been out for 3 years. It literally did not exist 4 years ago, but they want 10 years of experience. You see this all the time. So don't rely on the job description in the posting to determine whether you should send in your resume or not. If you've read through a job posting and you're looking at this job posting saying, this fits me, this is everything they're asking for here, the level of knowledge overall, and the information that they want are things that I know, and I think I could do this job. Now, if on top of all of that, they have put in the job posting a master's degree recommended and 10 years of experience. I don't know why they do this on entry-level positions. Just ignore it. Send your resume in anyway. Post your resume, put everything online, send it in. Just ignore their requirements completely if you really feel it's a good fit for you. So have a look at the job posting. Overall, you should be able to get a flavor of whether you qualify for this job or not. And if you think you do, ignore all of their requirements. Even if they say you must have a master's degree, you must have 10 years, ignore it. Just ignore it. Trust me, ignore it. Send in your resume. If that at the point they receive your resume and they are adamant that no, you must have a master's degree, you need a doctorate in nuclear physics, and you have to be able to have 25 years of experience before we'll hire you, then they'll throw your resume out. But I would bet that once they see your resume and it matches 90% of what they're asking for, okay. Now they might decide, okay, we'll put him on the list, put him in the pile. And this happens all the time. As I mentioned, there was just a post I was reading on Reddit. I didn't save it, but I can relay to you that the person got the job, but the job posting said that they wanted a certain number of years of experience that person didn't have. And they just sent their resume in anyway. They got a call, they got an interview, they got the job. So do not let yourself be the person sending yourself a letter saying that you didn't qualify. That doesn't even make sense. Well, I would apply for this job, but I just don't qualify. I'm sorry, we're going to have to pass on myself. We're going to have to make sure that I keep my resume later in case I ever want to hand this in to myself later. Makes no sense. Just send your resume in to the employer. Fill out whatever they want you to fill out. Send your resume in. They'll decide if you're good enough or not. Don't worry about it. And you see this all the time. I don't know where the jobs are that sometimes they are very, very clear. Do not even send your resume in unless you meet every single one of these requirements. Just ignore that. I don't even know why they put that. In the history of people trying to get a job, very few people have ever applied to a job and met every single one of the requirements that's in the list. You aren't going to find anybody like that. Those people don't exist. And if it is somebody who has every single one of those requirements and they're trying to get that job, they're probably applying to the wrong job. You should not be applying to a job where you know everything. That doesn't even make sense. Jobs don't work. In IT, jobs don't work that way. In IT, you have a certain percentage of knowledge or an aptitude towards the things that are going on in these organizations, but nobody knows 100% of what they need to do in a job when they start in that job. And you're probably not going to hire somebody who knows 100%. They probably want too much money for the job that you're posting. It's this weird, odd set of requirements. There's also a lot of these job postings are job postings by committee. HR obviously is responsible for getting people and putting them into positions. It's a major part of what HR does is be able to find people and fill open positions, get those requisitions filled. So they have a stock set of things they put on every job posting. but they need the bulk. They don't know anything about IT. So they go to the IT person who's in charge of this, the hiring manager, and say, all right, what's this person need to be able to do? All right, well, they need to be able to do this and this and this and this. It'd be great if they could do that. And it would sort of be nice if they had the knowledge of this. And somehow that gets translated into the final posting as you need 10 years of experience and you must be able to do all of these things or we won't even consider you. I don't know why that happens, but it does. Because people are human and they make mistakes and they aren't sure, and this is what they thought was the best way to do it. Just ignore that. You want at some point to have a resume that the hiring manager will see. That's your goal. And it wouldn't hurt that if you are applying to a company and it's a job, you really like this company, you really like the job that's posted, you're looking over their requirements, and they're asking for something that's a little outside the scope of what you think would be normal, send your resume in. Wouldn't be a bad idea to go out on LinkedIn, send the resume even to the manager of the help desk, if they happen to be on LinkedIn, send them the resume and say, hey, I saw the job posting. I wanted to run this by you because the job posting said I needed 10 years of work already in a nuclear power plant before I can work on an IT help desk. So I wanted to give you my resume to see, do you think this resume, even though it doesn't have that knowledge of nuclear physics, could this possibly work for you? Be nice to run it by them. They're looking for this job. They're looking to fill this job. They're going to read your resume and they'll tell you, yeah, you're a good fit. I'm going to pass this on to HR. So there's different ways to do this. Don't always be blocked by the job posting itself. Just send it in. Maybe they'll say no. That's fine. Rejection. I've had enough rejection in my life with jobs I've applied for, things I've wanted to do. People will tell you no constantly in life. It's good to get in practice to have people tell you no. People tell me no all the time. Nope, not going to do it. Nope, that's not what we're going to do. Nope, we're not going to go that direction. No, we're not going to purchase that. No, we're not going to do these things. Okay, maybe next time. Keep us in mind. We'll catch up to you somewhere down the road. But that's just a normal part of what we do. So if they say no, all right, go to the next one. Or maybe you work the angle a little bit, try to contact somebody you know inside. In that video I have on how to get a job in IT with no experience, I tell you that you need a formal education. It'd be great if you had industry certifications. It would be nice if you had practical experience, but that fourth element is knowing someone who works there. That's what you need. You need somebody who works there knowing that you're applying and that can speak up for you and tell HR, can you bring this guy in? Because I know this person. I've worked with them. There's somebody I've met online. They come to my user group meetings. You know them somehow. You don't have to be their best friend. You don't have to spend time with their family, but knowing somebody at a professional level, a professional acquaintance, that's what we're looking for. So it'd be good to reach out and start making some of those professional acquaintances so that when your job posting comes up and you send in your resume, they go, I know this person. Let's call them. It happens all the time. To give you a non-scientific and completely personal version of this, throughout my IT career, admittedly, I'm not working for anyone now, but prior to this, I had, coming right out of college, even in college, I had jobs, probably 15 or so jobs in IT. Now, some of those job titles, those are titles that changed as I either got into an organization, maybe I got a promotion from junior to senior engineer. That's a change. That's one of those 15 things. So technically not 15 different jobs at different companies, but 15 different titles that I've had throughout the years. The first job I got in IT out of college was working for a computer company in South Miami. No knowledge at all of anybody who worked there. They came to a job fair at the university. I met them. It kind of wasn't my first choice. But after going through the job fair, turns out it was my only choice. Everyone else rejected me at the job fair. I then moved to Miami and took this job. Didn't know anyone there. But then all 14 of the positions I got after that point were people that I knew in the industry who worked there. Sometimes those people were in IT. Sometimes those people were in a different part of the company. But the people in IT knew the people that I knew in the other part of the company. So don't dismiss the interpersonal connections that you have with people that happen to be at a company. You should absolutely take advantage of those if you happen to have a connection there, because people want to work with people they can trust. They want to know that you're going to come in when you say you're going to be there, that you'll work hard, that you'll leave at the end of the day, and that somebody else can vouch for you. That's the key. Yeah, I worked in Miami. I worked in South Miami. I was effectively a field service technician for, at the time, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. And so I'd get in my car in the morning. I would drive all over the place. I would do the 826. I would do the Turnpike. I would be up on 95. I'd be all over. And then back to South Miami at the end of the day, and finally home, which at that time was Hialeah. Not exactly near my place of work, but that's how it worked out, because I was chasing a girl down. It turns out I found a girl in Miami, chased her down to Miami. I didn't chase her. It sounds awful. I did. I moved to Miami so I could be close to this girl. So I needed a job in Miami after living in Tallahassee. So that's 8 hours away by car. Married the girl, moved back to Tallahassee. So that's kind of how it works. That is typical, isn't it? That's how it works. I'm just so easy. These days I'm more coin operated because I got the girl. Now I'm coin operated, as they say. So it's where's the money? I'll go there. If the money was in Miami, I would move back to Miami. So that's the thing. So that's how it works. As I like to say, I fooled her. So Mrs. Professor Messer is the girl I was chasing, and caught her, and we're stuck with each other now. There's no getting out of it. It's just not going to happen. I fooled her, I locked it in, and now we're good. So that's just how it works. Loved Miami, though. Lived in South Florida for 10 years. Loved it. And very once in a while, even though I'm in North Florida now, I still find people that are from Miami. We get to have great conversations about Miami, the old radio in Miami. When you're driving around in a car all day as a field service person, this was before there were satellite radio. If you can imagine a world where there was no internet, where there was no satellite radio, that was the world I was in. You turn on local AM radio, and you're listening to Neil Rogers and Rick and Suds and Phil Hendry, who was in Miami at the time. That's one of those where and you get conversations with people, and you start making connections, and you meet people, and you see them, and that's how you end up when you move from job to job. Oh, I know that person. I work with them in Miami. I know that person. I worked with them when I delivered a bunch of cables up to Broward County. Oh, I know that person. They helped me when I was replacing a hard drive at the county jail and locked my keys in the car, which was a real thing. So you don't know where you're going to meet people or how you're going to meet people, but that's sort of how it all worked out. Miami was an interesting place. I got to get back down there, if only to get to Cayocho and get some good Cuban food again. Miss that. Got to get more of that. I'm working on it. Not moving, but getting down there. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Kind of works. The good part is that you get to know people and you add them to your LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, get that LinkedIn going. You never know these people you meet and you LinkedIn with. You never know what's going to happen with that. The last job I had working for someone else, I got a job working as a systems engineer for Next Gen Firewall Company. Before Next Gen Firewall companies existed, quite honestly, they didn't have a product. They were just releasing a product, and they needed somebody to go out with the product and show people and say, isn't this great? Wouldn't you like to buy this? And I got that job. I got that job because I knew the person who got hired as the account manager, who I worked with years ago, and just kind of kept up with them on LinkedIn or whatever. And then he just called me out of the blue one day and said, hey, I'm taking a job at this place. I'd love for you to come and be my systems engineer. Is that something you consider? I wasn't even looking for a job. It just came out of the sky. Those things happen. And for some crazy reason, they hired me. That's their fault. So it worked out. I stayed there 7 years. So it worked out okay. So if you are not on LinkedIn, get that LinkedIn account going. Start adding your friends to it. Start adding people you work with. My LinkedIn is only with people. I am linked with only people I've worked with. So I realize a number of you have sent me LinkedIn requests to my personal LinkedIn account, and you'll notice that it has not been approved. It's not going to be. I do have my Professor Messer LinkedIn page. That's for Professor Messer. That's different. So you're welcome to join that, and I do my daily pop quizzes there as well. But my personal LinkedIn, I like it to be the people I have worked with because we've connected together, and when people see a new job, they'll tell somebody they know, they'll post it. We'll all sort of connect together that way. So it's a nice one to have there. Also in the chat room, question, Linux Plus videos, they would be nice. Currently, as you're very aware, A Plus is changing. So there will be a new A Plus sometime this year at some point. Probably not going to happen I wouldn't say anytime soon, but at some time this year, we will see more announcements for A Plus, and you'll have plenty of time to see the announcement. You'll have plenty of time to know when it's coming, and you'll have plenty of time to take your existing exams. Do not worry. The existing exams are not going away anytime soon. You've got plenty of time. So at some point, though, the A Plus will be done. I will finish it, get the course notes done, get the practice exams done, get everything posted, and we're finished. At that point, we're ready to do a new course. What's it going to be? On the chat room, some folks say Linux Plus would be good. Yes, it would. I have a big list of what I want to do next because I do want to do at least one more course this year. And I have a list of about 10 different options. I don't know what the best would be. You know, what we talked earlier about the Microsoft exam. So I should do this Microsoft MS900. And every time I see a new one, I think, oh, that one would be good. That'd be good to do. I should do the MS900. Until, of course, someone in the chat room says, how about Linux Plus? I go, yeah, Linux Plus. That would be great. I should do Linux Plus. I'm like a squirrel. Like, what? Yes, let's do that one. Somebody else will say, what about Cisco? Oh, CCNA. CCNA would be good. That's what I should do with CCNA. That's the one I should do. What about a cloud-based? What about Azure? Cloud? Oh, yeah. Azure would be good. That's what I should do. So it changes in my mind every day. The chat room. Thank you, chat room. I should do CCNA. So you're right. I should do one of these. I just don't know what it's going to be yet. I think I do, but I wake up tomorrow and it's something different. Something else has my attention. Oh, flashy lights. Oh, glitter. I like this. So I have to keep going back and forth over what would be the right thing to do and how it would work out. There's lots of variables involved, lots of different things I could choose from, but we'll see. That's a question for later this year. I'll do it all. What if there's the answer? Why wasn't I thinking that? Of course it is. So, one of the advantages, though, is as soon as this A Plus set is done, we will have just finished Security Plus, Network Plus, and A Plus, which means there's like a 2-year gap before I ever have to start working on these again. So it's time to get to work. It's time to figure it out. Time to see what makes sense. What would be a good one to do? I just don't know. We're all going to have to wait together because even I don't know what it's going to be. We'll figure it out. We'll know where to go with this at some point. Network Plus just updated. A Plus will be updating this year sometime. So That's it. We'll make it happen. We just don't know what it will be when it happens. Well, when it happens, we will know. Just now, we don't know. It's a real challenge. But first off, I appreciate all of your recommendations, though. So in the chat room, some folks have said AWS, Linux Plus, CCNA. I see those. I see you. And I absolutely take that information in. It goes in the database. It all gets added to the queue. So that's one of those that you're giving me recommendations. These are not recommendations in vain. Even if I don't ultimately go with the one that you wanted, I do consider all of them because there's value. If you're thinking about it, then I should be thinking about it. That's the value. So that's why I think it's the best way to do it. Maybe that's something that you can think about as well as you're doing those. There's always something new going on. There's always something behind the scenes being worked on, and we're more than happy to bring all of those to you in some way. There's going to be something that we're able to do. We've got more of these study groups coming this month. We have a Core 2 study group in 2 days. Come back on Friday for our Core 2 study group, which is exactly what we did today, but it's all Core 2 questions and answers, which are kind of fun. They've already been written. They're ready to go. We just need Friday to get here. We can do that live stream. That one's going to be great. Next week is our Network Plus study group. The week after that, Security Plus. So it's going to be a great February. Plenty of content to go through. Plenty of great study groups to really step through. Come on back on Friday. We'll do more of these. If you're ever wanting to attend one of our live streams, simply go to our calendar at professormester.com/calendar or check the event channel in Discord. I always keep them updated in Discord as well. There's a lot to go through there. And if I ever make a change, because maybe something changes between now and Friday, you will be the first to know or the second to know because I changed them first in both of those places so that you'll always know when the next event is going to be. Thanks for being here on this live stream. Thank you for your recommendations. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for all of that. And I think it's one of the times when we can really sit down and go through and understand more about these exams. Maybe it'll give you the information you need to really get those extra points you need to pass your A+ exam. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.